Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Next Gen Racing GTE GT3 Series Season 2 Test Event Day on the 9th of June 2021. That's right, we're back on iRacing for the precursor event to the upcoming second season of the growing and increasingly popular GT3 GTE series as hosted by the Next Gen Racing team. And today's test event, whilst it's not necessarily up for points or anything major up for grabs, there's always bragging rights, and our drivers will be looking to do their best over the course of the racing tonight. Now, to give you an idea, we're here today at the historical variant, the 1995 variant of the Circuit de Barcelona Catalunya in Spain, a very popular circuit in a number of different series, whether it be GT3, GTE, Formula 1, MotoGP, you name it, there's multiple variants, and it is indeed the case that we see this circuit be used on a very frequent basis in real world racing, and in the sim racing world it's the same. Our drivers absolutely love the circuit, and they love to be around here at the Spanish Peninsula doing everything they can in order to maximise that lap time and have the best possible result. Now, in terms of our schedule today, we have quite a hectic schedule for you. In just under 10 minutes, we'll be getting underway with the first qualifying session at 2000 hours, so that is British Summertime or UTC +1. So in 9 minutes time, qualifying 1 will occur. It is a 15-minute qualifying session, I should say, and then after that, we get underway with the first of the 2 races tonight, a 15-minute sprint race where our drivers are not expected to pit. It's literally flat out from start to end. After that, we'll give our drivers a brief break, and then following that, at 5 minutes to 9, we'll get underway with the second qualifying session, which will determine the grid for the feature race. The second qualifying session being another 15-minute session. And come 10 past 9, or a little bit after that most likely, we'll be getting underway with the feature race, which is 60 minutes in length and has a mandatory pit stop requirement. While our drivers will need to come into the pits to take on fuel, but outside of that, if they decide to change tyres, it's entirely up to them. So that's all our order for tonight, and if you're wondering who's on the commentary team, it's just myself. My name's Paul TX141 Walsh, also known as Britain a Spit, depending on what media you follow me on, and I will be your host and commentator for tonight. Without further ado, I'm moving away then from our current screen, but we can see at the moment that the temperature is 24 degrees centigrade and humidity is 55%, but we've got nice clear skies and 3 kilometres a mile an hour wind, so it's not too heavy in terms of the wind. We come down to the circuit then and we get to see who's currently out on circuit putting in their final practice before we get underway with the qualifying session. So right now we can see we've got a limited number of drivers out on the track. And in particular so far, as he heads back to the pits, is Aaron Taylor from the United Kingdom. Indeed, they're from the United Kingdom and Ireland, the combination there as dictated by iRacing screen. The number 10 driver there, bringing the Porsche today and looking to do his best in that mid-engine rear-wheel drive machine. The CXR car there, looking very fetching in its livery, of course, with the green and black livery, and we look forward to seeing what Mr. Taylor is able to do, being the fastest in this final practice session, with 138.9 to his name so far. However, we've got quite a few drivers from the United Kingdom and Ireland. We've also got Edward Lack, who's making his way right now down towards turn number 7. And as he makes his way through the uphill left-hander, going a little bit wide there, running out in the Corvette GTE machine there, the Chevrolet Corvette, of course, and looking very fetchy, that machine, and making his way right now through the increasingly difficult right-hander of turn 9 before coming into the braking zone for turn 10. Not a hairpin compared to the GP layout of later years, but instead we've got the flowing left-hander style hairpin here, as you can see, higher apex speeds and as a result not as difficult a corner perhaps on the brakes. Now, if you are tuning in, of course, this broadcast is being streamed via multiple means. It's being broadcast via my Twitch channel, it's also being broadcast via the official Next Gen Racing YouTube, and it's also being broadcast by the Next Gen Racing Facebook as well. If you are on Twitch, I will be able to see any comments that you post in the chat, so feel free to ask questions or let me know who you're supporting. If you're on Facebook or YouTube, unfortunately I won't be able to hear you as easily, and my sincere apologies about that, but still, all the same, glad to have you with us, and I hope you're all having a good week so far, as we've made our way through the hump day that is Wednesday, and now we move on to the second half of the week, the weekend only being 2 days away. But then we come away from Mr. Lack down towards Alex Everett here, making his way into the final corner, turn at 13. We've got rid of the chicane in the historical layout. We've got a much simpler layout in the final sector, and the Ferrari driver right now making his way down towards turn number 1 once again. Charging down there, looking very fetching in the Ferrari machinery, and coming into the braking zone for turn number 1, and you can see him nailing it very nicely on the brakes, the number 29 driver. We've also got Matt Emmons, who is following him through right now. Matt being in the BMW, and I believe that is the very recently introduced GT3 BMW M4, unless I'm very mistaken. A very nice looking car. Well, it perhaps divides opinion a little bit because of the rather chunky grille on the front, as you can see. The grilles recently added to the BMW cars being something of a point of debate, but if you're into your grilles, then you're definitely going to like this one. If you're not, however, I think you can still appreciate the aesthetic design there as Emmons takes us around the circuit, going through turn number 5 right now. Perhaps the slowest corner on the circuit given this layout, albeit making a very nice job there of that left-hand hairpin, and now making his way down through 6 and up into 7, 8 and 9. The wonderful sequence of corners. As we say hello to YBZ Gaming in the Twitch chat here, who'll be very shortly joining the race as well. He'll be joining the lobby. We hope to see him out on the circuit. As we take a look down to Colin Martin, also running in the German manufactured machinery of the BMW here, as he makes his way then out of turn number 10 and up into 11, and we can see it running in the M4 is Colin Martin coming out of the corner right now. We then got Jeremy de Bover, the Dutch driver here, making his way through turn number 5, bringing out the Porsche 911 RSR machinery here as he comes down towards the double left-hander section of 6 into 7, and then the right-hander of 8, looking at very fine as that livery there in the white with the lime green and black on the rear end as he jumps himself over the sausage curb there of turn number 8, but keeping the car relatively stable and making his way through 9 now. We've also got Jens Meyer here making his way around on the circuit, and as we can see here, Jens making his way down towards turn number 4 and again in the BMW, and it does look lovely in those M-Power inspired colours, or at least that looks M-Power related, but we will wait to see. He'll probably confirm afterwards that it might have been non-inspired by that, but it's up to him. We've also got Mark Sykes, the English driver here, making his way around the circuit right now. Now Mark, of course, a big shout out to Mark. Pardon me, a big shout out to Mark in the fact that he is one of the major organisers for the Next Gen Racing community, one of the senior administrators for the community, and it's good to have him out on the circuit. And having the chance to catch up with him earlier tonight, what he was saying to me in preparation for tonight is that he's not expecting to do too well. He expects he'll be one of the slower drivers out on the circuit, but he's still going to have a good laugh and have good fun with it and just enjoy himself at the end of the day. And that's what it's all about with these test events. They're full of races, but at the same time, no expectation on doing incredibly well. Just do it your best and enjoy yourself whilst you're out on the circuit, with 3 minutes to go until qualifying, of course, and we still got some drivers joining. And I should also do a quick hop back to Emmons. Emmons being our co-host as well, in fact our host of tonight's lobby, so as a result Emmons is our trackside steward and our race organiser putting this together, so a huge shout out to Emmons, much like his colleague Sykes. They're a senior member of the Next Gen Racing community, and it's great to have Emmons out on the circuit racing as well as running the show. We've also got Nigel Stock out on circuit right now, the British driver here in the Lamborghini Evo GT3 as he makes his way out of turn number 3. A nice flying there with that mid-engine rear-wheel drive machine, and now coming up towards turn number 4. The heavy braking zone here after all that speed gained out of turn 3 and coming in to the braking zone accordingly. And we've also got out on circuit, not to forget some of our other drivers here, we've also got Matthew Addy making his way right now through turn number 12 and then into turn number 13 in the Lamborghini as well. And Addy, of course, right now just getting himself acquainted. And we've also got Ben Payne, the British driver here in the BMW M4 GT3, making his way through turn 10 right now, and a rather fetching livery there. Looking at how the blue contrasts with the yellow and the black underneath as well, really showing off the curves of the aerodynamics of the machine. And last but not least, right now in terms of in the lobby, we do have Tom Delaney, who is joining in due order, I believe. But that we have 9 drivers out on circuit right now, and we look forward to seeing them all get underway in qualifying within the next minute or so. In fact, I think we will see some drivers immediately start hopping back very shortly. I should apologise, ladies and gentlemen, if we do see any brief disconnections at all. That'll be where the lobby is updated, but we should be a-okay. We shouldn't drop too much of the footage for you. But right now, with the time counting down until we get underway, I'm just checking in with race control, if you're wondering why I went a little bit silent, to see whether there has been any affirmation as to what's happening. Nothing at the moment, so we are still on track to get underway. And all of our drivers, I think, just getting themselves finalised, and we're almost coming to the end of the practice session. In fact, we've got just the best part of 15 seconds to go, and then we should be underway with qualifying. And place your bets, of course. Who do you expect to be on pole? I mean, Taylor seems to be the favourite at the moment, given the fact that his lap time has been absolutely sensational compared to everybody else's. The 138.9 there in practice, but as we have seen time and time again, what is registered in practice is not necessarily indicative of who's going to be on pole. It's just perhaps an early warning sign, but it's nothing more than that. That is the end of the final practice session then, and we will be getting underway with qualifying any moment now. So all of our drivers now taking it to the pits. The first our drivers to make their way out onto the circuit will be Martin as he makes his way out. Then in the BMW M4, of course, coming out of the pit lane right now and charging it down towards turn number 1. Now a little bit about what's the difference between a GTE and a GT3 car. So GTE cars, as we see there, Martin on cold tyres immediately spinning coming out of turn 1 there. In fact, a lot of drivers making mistakes, and you can see that the one driver who didn't make a mistake there was Taylor. Well, it wasn't Taylor, in fact, that was one of the other Porsche drivers there of stock who... Oh, well, that's not a Porsche, but that is stock making his way around the circuit. But I swear it was a Porsche that drove through there, unless I am very mistaken and my eyesight is deceiving me. But with qualifying currently underway, we've got 15 minutes, and the question will be, of course, what sort of times can our drivers put in here as we say hello to Budweiser 1977 in the Twitch chat, and we hope you're doing well, Budweiser, and do let us know who you're tuning in for today. And as you can see on the right hand side of our screen there, our sponsors flicking through. Just a big shout out to our sponsors, particularly Next Level Racing, who are supporting us in bringing the iRacing GTE GT3 Season 2 series at the end of this month, 3 weeks away. We're very grateful to have them on board, and indeed thankful for their support. But right now, everybody out on the circuit just getting themselves nicely warmed up here in terms of going on to their qualifying lap. And the first driver who is going to be taking us round, I believe, unless I am very much mistaken, will be our Lamborghini driver of stock. As he continues to make his way round right now, he's almost at the end of his current lap, and then he'll be getting fully underway very shortly. Making his way then out of turn number 11 and coming up in towards 12. Not too far to go for stock, only a little bit further, and then he will be getting underway with his flying lap, and we are going to jump on board to take you around with the lap. So as he comes out the final corner then, you're going to see a building up that speed coming down on to lap number 1, his first flying lap. So coming across that timing line, building up that speed towards turn number 1, continuing to accelerate and looking out for the markers on the left hand side here, and he's going to be braking down at about that 100 board, just going a little bit before it, coming into the apex of turn number 1 before switching it back to left hand side for turn 2, a right into left combination there before now charging through the right hander of turn number 3 and just trying to keep the revs up as high as possible, just bouncing a little bit off the apex curve there, and he'll be wary of that, the fact it's flicked the car slightly off the apex, and now charging down towards turn number 4. He goes into the corner here, a heavy braking zone, not the heaviest on the circuit mind you, but one of the heavier ones, gets it nicely flying out to turn 4, and now coming up into 5, the slowest corner on the circuit, the hairpin style corner, the downhill hairpin, making his way through the corner very nice indeed. He's got traffic up in front, however, a driver's gone off the circuit there, but he makes his way around the driver ahead of him, and now goes down to turn 7, a difficult braking zone here because he needs to balance the throttle as he comes out of 7 and make sure he gets it nice and early into 8. He does indeed there, perhaps could have used a little bit more track width, but still got it nicely now through 9, a balancing act here, not letting the car drift and understeer off wide, and now he's making his way down towards turn 10, another heavy braking zone here, going up into 5th gear and then stamping on the anchors, coming all the way down the gears to 2nd gear before turning through the corner, the extended hairpin here, and as he comes out of the corner now it's the long charge up towards turn 11, the long run uphill into the right hander. As you can see, he's actually got some traffic, so he's going to have to back out the lap here. Not fortunate for stock, as we can see the Porsche in front of him there, bit on a fast lap, and as a result stock moving out of the way, but he won't be too aggrieved by that as he's going to come out the final corner very shortly to set his opening lap time, knowing that he could have been a little bit faster. But of course thank you to stock for that as he makes his way across that timing line, and that time there was a 1:45.2, which of course, given the fact he had to give way right at the end of the lap, that's cost him a bit of time. But provisional pole right now of 39.1 as has gone to Taylor. That was Taylor who did come charging through, and you can see that Taylor on a very different pace lap as he goes a little bit too high there on the turn 2 apex curb, and that sends the car into the runoff area and he resets to the pits. Now, the thing about GTs versus GT3s is that the GTEs have less downforce on them, but they have more powerful engines. Now, what that means is that the GT cars are expected to be faster, but the flip side of the coin is it's a bigger balancing act in terms of making sure to keep the car and all that speed through the corners. Whereas with the GT3s, they've got slightly less engine power, and when I say less, I'm talking about approximately 500 horsepower for a GT3 compared to the GTE such as we saw of Lack there in the Chevrolet Corvette as he's making his way through turn number 5, and Lack there in the GTE as we're getting a little bit of a latency issue with Lack's car. We can't quite see him all the time. He does seem to be disappearing off our screen every so often, but we can see right now Emmons in the GT3 car, so he'll have about 500 horsepower. Meanwhile, Lack in that Corvette will have approximately 650 horsepower. As we also say hello to Brownie30 and Zeronic in the Twitch chat. As our drivers continue to make their way around, what we can see is that Emmons right now in the BMW M4 GT3 doing a very good job with a 44.7, making his way through turn number 9 right now. And Tom Delaney, meanwhile, Delaney right now, the British driver who's just come across the line to set a 46.6, improving, but still a good chunk of time down on the people he's competing with in his overall category here. He's resetting to the pits, but Delaney continuing to put in the laps right now, and indeed a lot of drivers just getting themselves psyched in. We've still got the best part of 10 minutes of this qualifying session to go, and we can see at this time that Everett right now currently in P3, making his way down towards turn number 1 once again here. It does look as though Everett right now doing a very good job. Only the best part of 1.2 seconds off of our pole sitter right now is Everett as he makes his way through turn number 3 in the Ferrari machine here, and he's got a bit of traffic ahead of him. He's got that Lamborghini ahead of him, and I believe that may be Addy alternative Stock. I think that actually is Stock ahead of him, and he's being caught up right now, and he is trapped behind Stock a little bit. So as a result of this, it is going to be the case that as Stock moves out the way from the two of them are side by side down into turn number 5, but I think it's the case that Everett's been able to get through, but you can see that he did have a yellow sector in sector 1, and as a result of that was not able to improve, and I think the traffic just held him up a little bit as he makes his way now through sector 2. Through turn 7 he goes, and now up into the uphill right, just clipping the sausage curb a tiny bit of turn 8 there. That's the amount you want to clip at most, because it will only lift the car up slightly, but it won't send the car flying off the circuit as he makes his way through 9 and now down towards 10. It's looking a very composed lap by Everett all the same, but it's not been his fastest lap. Still setting yellow sectors in 2 as well, and that means being down on his personal best right now, and he will be looking to try and find some more magic come the next lap, that I'm sure. His best lap being that 39.76, and that was set on his previous lap. He's tripping over a lot of cars right now, is Everett, as he's continuing to make his way around and going on to another lap. And as he comes out of the final corner, then we're going to be jumping on board with the British driver and seeing what he can achieve. Riding on board with the nose here, giving you a feel for what it's exactly like being right at the front of that car as he makes his way down towards turn number 1. You'd love to be here, and we'll take you around. So coming down to turn 1 then, braking hard down the gears here into the first corner, third gear corner, as he flows out, missing a little bit the apex curb there, but getting a nice cut back into turn 2 before switching the car over to the left to turn into the right-hander 3, taking a moderate apex there, getting it just about right before getting on that throttle and building up a lot of speed. Comes down to the timing line here for sector 1, and we take a look over and we see that it's not an improvement so far in sector 1 for Everett as he's continuing to push around here. And in fact going into turn number 5 now, as we do see that we are seeing some timings jump around on our screen, and Seeger has just jumped into the pits, and Everett now charging down towards turn number 7. He's coming down hard on the brakes here. I should point out, by the way, if you're wondering what the split of our grid is, we do have 3 drivers in the GT machines and we have 10 drivers in the GT3 machines, and you can see that Emmons the best of the GT3 category at the moment of 44.7, whereas Taylor, Lack and Everett being those GTE guys, we can see that Taylor leading right now as we continue to follow Everett down into turn 10 here. And again, what a brilliant piece of driving so far by Everett, albeit it's not his best lap, and you can see in fact he's aborting the lap and immediately heading back to the pits. He knows that after 2 sectors this has not worked out, but he has still got the best part of 6 minutes in this qualifying session. Stock there having made, I think, a bit of an error going off the circuit out of turn number 3, and I'm not exactly sure what happened. Let's take a look back at what happened to Stock. So he just simply tried to turn into turn 3 and the car just went. The rear end snapped on him, and as a result he had to get the car off the circuit as quickly as possible there. Stock just being caught out by some oversteer going into turn 3, but that can happen particularly with the mid-engine rear-wheel drive layout of the Lamborghini that he's driving. And just checking back in with race control, we're not hearing anything else. We may have 1 or 2 more drivers arrive at the circuit before we get underway with race number 1, as we see Stock having a very difficult time with the rear end of that car. It just does not want to stay together, as we note that Colin Martin right now currently sat in what is P4 in the GT3 category, doing a very good job. Could this be an improvement here as he comes across the timing line? It's not quite an improvement to get him up the order. His previous best was a 45.3. That there was a 45.7, but he is improving, Martin, and he's purple in the second sector, looking as though there's a lot of potential out there. As right now, meanwhile, the leader of the GT3 class, i.e. Emmons, doing a very nice job out on the lap, and Taylor improving to a 39.0 in the GTE class by comparison. So that's Aaron D. Taylor, the British driver, who we're not looking at right now. We're currently focused on Emmons by comparison, who is currently our pole sitter in the GT3 category. But all of our drivers just continue to get those laps in. We've got just under 5 minutes to go now, and I think it is the case. It will be a question of, can anybody beat Emmons for pole in the GT3 category, where he's got half a second over Siegert right now. Jochen Siegert, of course, the German driver, going on to another lap here in the BMW M4 GT3 as well. The number 148 driver going on to his lap then, and let's see what he's able to do. The Jägermeister Mobile. Making his way uphill here through the right hand of turn number 3. What you can see right now from Siegert is the fact that looking very composed on this lap, although Bova has just improved and moved up to provisional P2 with a 45.2. Oh, sorry, not 45.2, a 45.0, and as a result of that, the gap between the top and the bottom of the GT3 class is getting ever closer right now. Emmons has improved to a 44.7, it should be pointed out, just on his lap that he's just conducted. So it is a result that everybody is trying to chase down Emmons, and that gap is coming down, and we'll see be able to improve here as he's making his way through Sector 2 right now. Can he set a faster lap and move himself further up the order? Making his way through turn 9 there, almost running a little bit too wide onto the exit curve, and now coming down into turn number 10 here. He's going to need to nail this one as he goes into sector 3. And we're seeing right now that he is not improving. In fact, he is quite down compared to his previous lap, is Siegert, as he continues to push around all the same, coming through at turn number 11 and up into 12. It's not looking a major lap right now, but he's only 1.5 tenths off of Bova, who's moved up to that provisional P2 in the GT3 category. So there's still time for Siegert to get himself back onto the front row of the GT3 group as he makes his way out the final corner. What's this going to be for the German driver? And it is not an improvement. It's a 46.9, so still some time out there as we see that Nigel Stock has improved to a 46.0, moving on to provisional P3. Sorry, P5 I should say, in the GT3 category. But meanwhile, coming back to our GTs, we can see Taylor making a complete hash brown of it there, coming out of turn 5. Let's just see what happened to Taylor. It's coming out of turn 5 then. Did he just get on the power too soon? He did indeed, and the car carried off onto the gravel. The two right-hand wheels said goodbye, no thank you ma'am, and just sent him flying across the circuit. So Taylor having a little bit of a scary moment there, but he's still got 2 minutes to go. He's still got one more lap at least in this qualifying session. Albeit, probably be hoping he doesn't make the same mistake twice. As meanwhile, we can see that Mayer right now in P9 in the GT3 group as well. It looks as though I say that and immediately commentator's curse kicks in, seeing him go into the wall there, spinning out of turn number 4. That's very unfortunate for the driver as he reverses and tries to get clear of the drivers coming around the circuit right now. Of course, got to be very conscious of the fact he's triggering those yellow flags, and our drivers will be very aware of it. But Bova still, the Porsche 911 driver, making his way out of turn number 5 and looking to try and get himself a little bit further up towards Emmons. He did improve over the last couple of laps, but he's still got some place to improve as we've only got the last lap now. Really only time for one more lap from all of our drivers as he rides a little bit too high over the apex curve there at turn 9. And you could see how the car was thrown up into the end. He's had to back out of it immediately, just riding too high in the apex and just cooling things down right now. And I think parking up to go back to the pits, which if so, that means that Bova's qualifying session will be over. He won't be getting in another lap. So as we take a look up front, we can see that Taylor, having done a phenomenal job so far in qualifying, 7.5 tenths clear of anybody else within the GTE category, and his main competitor being that Lack at this point, Everett being a further 4 tenths down on that, so 1.1 seconds. Everett improving to a 40.1, mind you, off camera, but not enough to get him close enough in the Ferrari 488 GTE Evo machine, as we can see here that Taylor making his way down towards turn number 7 once again here, and it doesn't look as though he's improved in Sector 1. Can he improve in Sector 2 and raise the bar even higher? Not that I think he needs to be fair, as he's only got half a minute to go this qualifying session, so he won't be getting another lap in. And as he comes out of turn number 9 and up towards 10 here, are we going to see any improvement from the Briton as he comes across the timing line then to complete Sector 2? No, he does not. So he is down in both sectors. This is not going to be an improvement from Taylor. I think he's done more than enough in order to get himself into that pole position. And who else have we got out on circuit right now? Well, we've still got Emmons. He's still competing for that pole position in the GT3 class. As we can see that Nigel Stock right now, green in Sector 1. So on a personal best right now in Sector 1. Can Stock improve as qualifying has come to the end? So all drivers are expected to complete their current lap before they come into the pits. Can Stock get any further up the order? He's currently P5 provisionally as he makes his way then through turn number 10 and up towards 11 here. Just flying through the left-hander, now coming into the right-hander, the uphill right, where the car will want to just gradually understeer as he gets the throttle on. 2 personal best sectors so far. The previous sector there being a 41.58, and now he's got 1 more sector to go. Can he improve? Can he get himself up the order, or is it going to be the case that this is not an improvement when he comes out of the final corner? Then his previous best was a lap to not remember, but you see there he does not improve on that final part of the lap. So as a result of that, he is still in provisional P5, and I think that is going to be P5 for Stock as all of our drivers come to the end of their qualifying laps then. Martin right now just completing his current lap. Coming down towards turn number 10 is the British driver. As we can see him making his way into the left hand and now coming down into that heavy braking zone. As he makes his way through the corner, they're going a little bit deep in fact and having to get the car brought back together through the corner. It is going to be pole position going to Taylor in the GTE class, taking that with the 1:39.0, and I think unless I'm mistaken, Emmons is going to be taking pole position here in the GT3 class. We've only got 2 drivers now out on the circuit, if that. We're watching Martin, and Seeger, I believe, has already crossed the timing line. But we see Martin coming across the line here, and as he does he improve? He does not. So it will be the case that, well, he does improve. In fact, he jumps up, my sincere apologies, he jumps up to a 44.9 there, and that moves him up to P3 in the end in the qualifying order for GT3 class. So as a result, with Seeger just parked out on circuit, that is the end of qualifying, and pole position in the GT3 class will go to Matt Emmons, but right there Colin Martin leaving it until the last minute in order to get the job done. Fantastic work from Martin to get himself up into provisional P3. Emmons taking the pole in GT3 and Taylor taking the pole in the GTE class. And now we're waiting for, I believe it is Seeger, to get himself out off the circuit and into the pits, and we'll be getting underway with race number 1 very shortly, ladies and gentlemen. So right now, all of our drivers will be getting themselves out onto the rolling start line. And we can see, in fact, that our drivers are parked up at just the entry point into turn number 10. We've got the safety car ahead of them, of course. Everybody just getting themselves set. And of course, we expect that our GTE drivers will very quickly break away from the GT4 guys, but the question will be, can Emmons, who's going to be starting here in the centre of your camera right now, can he get the good launch and get away from his GT3 opponents, or will it be the case it's a different story as he comes out of turns 1 and 2 and goes into 3? Everybody just waiting to get underway, doing their last little bits of tuning. And Ben Payne, what can he do starting from the back, of course, as we are starting to get the lights and the rolling start procedure underway. So the formation lap is about to kick off. So all of our drivers getting themselves underway as part of that rolling start procedure. Though we do see a lack there every so often, seemingly disappearing and then reappearing. We hope that's not going to become a recurring theme over the course of the racing tonight. And as they make their way into turn number 12, getting ready to get underway. Well, the safety car is out the way, so we'll be green to race very shortly, ladies and gentlemen. And it's lights out and away we go. And immediately what you can see, Taylor getting a very strong start there as they go charging down the straight here towards turn number 1. And as they do, well, meanwhile, Everett on the inside of Lack there as they go into the braking zone, heavy on the brakes, but we can see there that Everett deciding to back out of it versus Lack, realising that he probably hasn't got the confidence in the car straight away in order to go for the move. Meanwhile, further back, we can see that Emmons making a solid start versus the rest of the GT3 category, although Nigel Stock and Jeremy DeBoer battling through turn number 3, and as they make their way through the right-hander here, you can see that Stock versus Bar, it's continuing down into the braking zone for turn 4, and I think it is the case that Bova has got himself ahead. A nice chain move there from turn 2 as we've got a driver off there, and I believe that is Addy going wide out of turn number 4. That might actually be Mark Sykes. I think Mark Sykes has had a little run off there just coming through turn 4 going out into the gravel, but a good number of changes of places so far, and in particular Bova making a huge amount of gain at the start, getting himself up into P4 and now chasing after those podium positions. But meanwhile, with the GT guys breaking away, we look a little bit further back right now, and we can see that further back Addy under a little bit of pressure right now from Mayer as they make their way into turn number 9. Just having a solid drive here is both drivers at this point in time as they make their way up towards turn 10 then, and the question will be, will Addy be able to find his way past Delaney immediately, or will he have to wait and bide his time as they go into the corner where you can see Delaney going very deep there into the hairpin, but it does switch back to a right hander now as they come up into turn 11, and it's Delaney on the inside, it's Addy on the outside, the two of them side by side, and Delaney holding on right now, taking a defensive inside line there as he's got his right to, but you can tell that Delaney really struggling right now to get that car stabilised, that Porsche just not wanting to cooperate, but the Lamborghini meanwhile of Addy doing a very solid job as they come out of the final corner then and to the end of lap number 1. So in terms of how things stand after one lap, it is Aaron D. Taylor leading from Edward Lack, followed by Everett in the GTE class. Meanwhile, it's Emmons ahead of Seeger in the battle for the lead in the GT3 class, with Martin in P3 behind, and then we've got Jeremy DeBova in P4 after making the move versus Stock on the opening lap, and then Stock behind in P5 right now, and then we've got Delaney still holding off Addy for the time being. In fact, we can see that behind him right now it is a case that neither driver really wanting to relinquish that battle for P6, although Addy has fallen back a little bit, and then we have got Addy in P7 and Mayer in P... My apologies, in P8, and as they make their way into turn 4, we can see we have got Payne up the inside. There's major contact. My goodness, that's huge contact there for both drivers, and I think that was just a little bit too adventurous of Payne to make that move up the inside. Let's take a look back at what happened. So as you can see here, as they're coming up into the corner, it's going to be Payne on the inside. I think under braking there, it was the case he found himself on the inside, but I also think that it was one of those situations where he put himself on the inside and he made it clear, but at the same time, I don't think Mayer recognised the fact that Payne was on the inside and turned in prematurely, but that was a very, very difficult one for both of them, and as a result now they'll find themselves quite a way down the order. But meanwhile, we look back up front and we can see that Stock right now in P3 with all things considered, and I think we've actually had an instance where Bova has gone off the track somewhere because he has dropped down the order, and let's take a look what happened to Bova. So So we can see that Bova just simply going a bit wide out of turn number 5, and that's how Stock got past. And as a result, now Stock is up 2 places. He's up into P3 as we switch back to the live television, and we can see doing a good job right now in P3, as we note that behind Delaney going a little bit wide out the final corner. They're just getting carried away with the throttle pedal, with the loud pedal a little bit too much, as we know that Emmons right now in the GT3 class is going the fastest of everybody in this category. But meanwhile, we can see that Addy on the inside versus Delaney, and I think Delaney's finally going to get it done down into turn 1. Or is he? Or will Addy be catching him back up very shortly? Oh, my apologies, as we look back up front right now, and we can see that, in fact, that is Martin right there. So our timing screens are a little bit confused, but Martin right now doing a very good job, and in fact getting himself past Delaney, and Delaney just with that little off through a turn at number 13, costing him the position as they continue to make their way around. But drifted a little bit, and in fact I think Delaney there just riding a little bit too high on the curb of turn number 4, and as a result losing out on the ability to come back against the BMW driver as they make their way out of turn number 5 and down towards 6 and 7. Now, as we continue to look back around the circuit then, we can see that right now, Mayer, after that incident with Payne, are looking to recover himself into this race. Of course, damage on the car will not be helping, but he is the best part of what is approximately 5.2 seconds down on Sykes. Sykes being ahead of him right now and in a world of his own. Of course, Sykes was saying going into this, as I mentioned earlier, not expecting to be the fastest, but will try and be the most consistent of everyone. And meanwhile, we look up and we can see that Bova and Martin side by side through turn at number 11, and it looks as though Bova has got the move done. Let's take a look back at how it happened. So on the brakes, a simple move into turn 10 there, and he was just up the inside. He had the overspeed into the corner, and he got it done. Very nice indeed as they make their way through turn 12 and down towards 13. And I think it'll be the case that Martin will look for a way to come back. Of course, Martin in the slipstream right now, and as we look to the BMW driver here, we can see getting ever closer to the back of his opponent, and you can see that Bova going defensive to the inside down into 1 as they go on to another lap, and he's going to try and hold the inside line here, but he's got to be so careful because remember it switches back to a left-hander out of 1 into 2, and you can see that Martin initially getting passed around the outside, but he's still there on the inside a little bit into turn 2, so Bova has to give him the space, and they're still side by side going up the hill into turn 3, and Martin are looking for the cutback this time as they make their way out of 3, the long right-hander, and head up towards 4 here. I don't think this is over just yet. We're going to stay watching this action for the meantime as we see behind Delaney and Addy now coming to blows as well behind, but it looks as though Martin just backing off a little bit now, but here you can be sure he's going to try and get himself right in there very shortly as they make their way down towards turn at number 5, and we jump on board with the BMW driver. Now what you can see here, oh goodness me, it looks as though Bova there made a major error coming out the corner, and Martin had to stamp on the anchors in reaction, but Martin will know now he's got the number of his opponent, and as he makes his way through turn 7, he just needs to encourage Bova to make a mistake, as I hear that Addy has made a move for P6 behind, and he's made his way up the order there, but I think it's the case that Delaney has gone off the circuit and just returned to the circuit, so that pass happened. Bova has crashed into the wall. What has happened here? There's been a major incident. He's coming up the hill here through turn number 9. Remember, he made the mistake through turn 5. He rode it too high on the curb there, going into turn number 9 onto the apex, and the car just snapped away from him. That's a disaster for Bova. But remember what I was saying just only moments ago, with the pressure he was feeling, it would have been the case that perhaps a mistake was going to happen, and it has happened, dropping him all the way down to P9 in the GT3 category. Now looking at our GTEs, meanwhile, up front, what I can tell you is that Taylor right now is leading by 2.8 seconds ahead of Lack. Lack there at the rear of your camera in the Chevrolet Corvette GTE. And then behind them, you've got Everett, who's currently stuck in P3 right now. And as he makes his way around through turn at number 4, we can see that it's the natural order, with Taylor just gradually eking away from his 2 opponents in the GTE category, but still good racing ahead of them, and I'm sure strategy will mix things up as well. But it won't be in this race, of course, because it is a sprint race, so the strategy will come in more in the 60-minute feature race later down the road. But coming further down the road then, we can once again see that we've got Stock right now in P3 in the GT3 category, and I think he'll be very happy with how things currently stand. If he can bring home a podium in race number 1, it'll be a great turn of form. In fact, he's gone up 2 places, and it would be a shame if he wasn't able to catch up to Seeger in front, but Seeger being 2.7 seconds ahead. I think that's, sorry, 2.9 seconds ahead. I think that's going to be a little bit of a tall order, as we see right now Sykes being reeled in here by Mayer. Mayer making that recovery drive, of course, after that major incident between himself and Payne only a couple of laps ago, as they make their way up through turn number 7 then, and you can see that Sykes catching up to Delaney as well. They're both drivers making their way up the hill here, and Martin, I believe, has actually had an off somewhere, so Martin dropping all the way down the order. He's dropped 4 places, so Martin, where did Martin go off? So getting it very sideways there through turn number 8, and as a result, well, going into turn number 8, so riding a bit too much apex curb into 7, and that is what happened to Martin. So dropping him down the order right now, and a lot of drivers getting a promotion as a result of that. And Stock in particular, EMP will be pleased with that, but the one who'll be jumping up and down in joy right now, what I can tell you is that we have got Matthew Addy, who's made his way up into P4. He's gained 4 places as a result of battling and the mistakes of others, and the Lamborghini driver right now is flying. He may not be the fastest in the GT3 category, but he's definitely keeping it consistent, and he'll be very pleased with how things are turning out as he makes his way down towards turn number 1. Once again, just over 5 minutes to go in this race. But Martin right now catching up to Bova and looking to come back. That M4 looking very strong on the straight here down into turn 1, getting ever closer to the back of Bova. He's got him in his sights, but the thing is, catching up to the Porsche 911 driver is one thing, getting past him is another thing, as we've seen in the battle so far. They make their way up through turn 3 then, and it is the case that Bova right now will be thinking to himself, right, where can I make myself so difficult as to block? Well, I think he will try and do it effectively going through sectors 2 and 3, because that's where the Porsche will have the handling advantages with the mid-engine rear-wheel drive layout compared to the front-engine rear-wheel drive layout of Martin's BMW M4. But as they make their way through the hairpin here, coming into turn 5, the turn 5 hairpin, you can see that Martin is just keeping it nice and composed and able to get a good flying line out there. It seems though Bova's struggling a little bit for apex speed coming out of the corner, and as a result of that, it's just costing the ability to pull away as both drivers make their way up the hill now towards turn number 9. And as they go up the hill, of course, we look back on terms of, we look from not the chase cam right now, my apologies. You see from the blimp here, looking a little bit high up, that we have got Bova just gradually eking out a little bit of a gap now as they come down towards the hairpin corner here of turn number 10. And it looks as though at a distance that Martin are just keeping the number in here as they make their way into the braking zone for 11. But you can see how Bova is getting reeled in bit after bit, and I think it will be the case that soon he is going to be under a lot of pressure. But still, switching back to the here and now, and we look a little bit further around the circuit, we can see that these two are the closest battlers out on circuit right now as our drivers are coming around to complete another lap. And we're going to take a quick sip of water. They're making their way down towards turn number 1. Once again, you can see that in that slipstream, Martin being very strong, just able to build the speed on Bova. But it's as soon as we get to the handling sectors where it seems though Bova struggles. And up here, I think Martin, if he's going to go for the move, he needs to do it into turn number 4, because this is where he is the strongest and he is the closest he has ever been. He's 2.8 tenths off of the driver in front right now. And as they go into that braking zone, he's not quite close enough and he has to follow through once again. And Martin looking to do everything he can, although Bova goes a little bit deep there coming through turn number 4, although he's in the inside defensively versus Martin into turn number 5, and as a result he can park the car on the apex. But Martin looking for the cutback there, and he almost gets it. Bova just almost missing parking it on the apex of the corner, but he just about got it done. And now through 7 they're about to go, and into the uphill left to right combination here before the right hander of turn 9. You can see Martin so close behind right now. You have to imagine he's going to try and send it up the inside very shortly, as we note Bova taking another cut onto the turn 9 apex there, and he's got to be so careful not to ride it too high after what we saw earlier on with the incidents, as we hear that Jens Meyer has had an off somewhere out on circuit and he's just returned to the circuit, as has Siegert. In fact, Siegert being EMP2 right now. But we can see that Martin a little bit sideways there coming out of turn 10, really pushing it is the BMW driver, but not able to find a way to get past Bova as it currently stands, as they make their way down towards turn number 12, and then only one more corner awaits them before they go on to another lap. Just over 2 minutes, as we've got somebody, Mark Sykes there I think that is, who's had a major incident. What's happened to Mark? So he's coming up to turn number 12 here and going through the right hand. Does he just go too wide here? He drifts sideways, in fact, under braking. And as he went to the apex there, the car just simply went. The rear end stepped out, and that is Mark going from P6 all the way down to P8 now. That's a disaster for Mark, who was doing so well, but still focusing on the Martin versus Bova battle. You can see Martin, the closest he ever was into turn 1 there, and then making a mistake through turn 2, which has opened the gap up to almost a second. Just one little mistake, and it's all gone a little bit pear-shaped. But these two, I'm sure, will still have more battle ahead. If not in this race, then definitely in the feature race tonight, later on in the evening, as we see them both making their way through turn number 4 right now. Looking at further around, of course, we can see that our race leader in the GT3 category, Emmons, well, he is 4.8 seconds ahead of Siegert right now, and just doing everything he needs to, not making any mistakes, not having any tragedies occur or any major incidents, just bringing that car home. And he's only got one more lap after this one, and I think he'll be very pleased with the fact he's been able to just run away with this. Stock, meanwhile, Nigel Stock down in P3. He is gradually being reeled in a little bit by Addy. It should be pointed out the gap between these two coming down very slowly, but the more important thing is with Siegert having a run off the circuit, we're just hearing in our ear that Siegert had an off only the previous lap. It means that Stock now finds himself 1.3 seconds behind Siegert, behind the German, and as they make their way onto the final lap, I don't think he's going to be close enough here to go for a move on the final lap, but I think Stock will be thinking to himself right now, okay, well, perhaps it's the case in race number 2, I might be able to get myself even further up the podium. Given the fact he's putting in a very consistent run, and you can see on the straight here down towards turn 1, that gap has come down to 1.1 seconds as they go into the braking zone here, although Stock a little bit more cautious on the brakes by comparison with Siegert, and the braking difference there opening the gap up by 0.2. With 30 seconds to go before we call time on this race, and our drivers will be required to complete their current lap. I can then tell you in the GTE category, Taylor still running away with things. Now the gap 6 seconds away from Lack behind him, and then it's a further 10.8 seconds down the road to Everett. The GTE class not really coming too close together after the opening lap, but it's a lot closer further down the order right now, as we can see that Martin still as close as he has been to the back of Bova, but I think it's going to be the case as they're coming on to complete their race, with Lack right now coming across the finish line here, and I think the timer, I think it's just come across the line in time, so he'll be doing one more lap. I think we can see, well, in fact, that is his race complete, so Lack has completed his race right now. We can see that Martin still chasing after Bova, but not able to catch up, and it is the case, doing everything he can to get as close as possible. In fact, going too wide there out of turn number 8, and I think that is it for Martin's attempt to catch up right now, and I think he'll have to settle for P7. But coming out of turn number, I believe, well, in fact, it won't be him, instead, it is Matt Emmons who is going to come home to win the GT3 category. As he comes out the final corner here, the British driver, having done a fantastic job, will win race number 1 in the GT3 category ahead of Siegert, who's coming across the line in P2, and then it is going to be Nigel Stock with a great podium finish there. Behind these guys, it's going to be Addy in the end, who comes home in P4 in the GT3 category, as he goes a bit wide out there and decides to take the DRS board home as a souvenir, and it's going to be a Delaney in P5, Bova in P6 in the end, Martin in P7 not able to make the jump up, and then it will be Sykes coming home after what was looking to be an assured P6 with one little mistake, coming home in P8 instead, and then it's going to be Mayer who comes across the line here in what will be P9. A difficult race for him thanks to the incident between himself and Payne, but I'm sure he will bounce back for it, and our winner in the GTE category by 6.9 seconds in the end will be Taylor, as he comes across the line here to take the win in race number 1, and second place will go to Lack as he makes his way out of the final corner to cross the line, and it will be Everett then who comes home in P3. Well, I believe we are actually still racing in the GT3 category there, folks. My sincere apologies if we are. And so that's the GT guys coming across the circuit as the checkered flag is now brought out for our drivers. Apologies for that. But what we can see is that Evans right now still leading, and in fact behind. I think we've got a battle kicking off all over the place here for Delaney, who I think has had an off somewhere. Alternatively, yeah, he had, well, no, Addy's made the off, and in fact Addy dropping down right now to P6 as a result. Last minute drama on the final lap here in race number 1, as we can see that Delaney battling with Bova and Addy as they make their way down towards turn number 10. It's going to be 3 wide into the braking zone here, and Addy looking all the way at the inside, but he can't quite find it, and as a result of that, Delaney holding on for the time being. Bova there, who tried to go all the way around the outside, perhaps capitalising on the two guys fighting as there's contact, and Addy hits the back of Bova, and you can see there that Martin also got caught in that, but I think there's going to be a word to the stewards about Addy there, because that was a very near miss. But Emmons right now bringing home the win in race number 1 in the GT3 category, and we can see coming out the final corner, Addy backing out of it, letting Bova back past. So that's how they're going to finish in the end. It will be Delaney who brings home the P4 in the GT3 category, as well. It's Delaney, yep, and then Martin in P5. But just to take you through the finishing order there of the GT3 category, Emmons winning by what was in the end the best part of 5.1 seconds over Siegert, and then it was Stock in P3, Delaney in P4 who has jumped back to the pit, and it was Martin in P5 after that last lap incident, Devova in P6, Addy in P7 after what was an incident that looked to be triggered by himself, and then it was Mark Sykes in P8, Mayer in P9, and Ben Payne in P10. We're just going to take a look back at that major incident there between what was Addy and the other drivers, if we can. In fact, we don't have that available to us, unfortunately, folks. So that is race number 1 complete, but some fantastic racing from our drivers. And now we can look forward to race number 2. Well, before we get to race number 2, of course, we do have another qualifying session. But even before that, as our drivers will jump back into the pits on their cool-down laps, we do have a brief break for our drivers, which will last approximately 15 minutes before we get underway with the second qualifying session. But some fantastic racing there, and plenty more to come in the second half of tonight. All of our drivers right now just getting themselves set up in the pit lane and having a brief breather, as I'm just checking in with race control to see if there's been any update or any further information conveyed. Nothing at the moment. Yet we are just waiting for qualifying number 2 to get underway. So as a result, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to be taking a brief break. But I can assure you one thing, we will be back in approximately 10 to 15 minutes to get underway with the second qualifying session. So we'll be back in 10 minutes. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, we are back and we are live at the Spanish circuit once again. So sorry for the slight delay there. We were just getting the server that we're hosting this race on turned over from race 1 to race 2, but the second qualifying session is now underway. It's been underway for the last 4 minutes, but you'll see that a lot of drivers right now are piling into the circuit. They're coming into the paddock, albeit you can see there that stock deciding to get it a little bit wrong going through turn 4, but a number of drivers have done that over the course of this evening. But everybody returning to the trackside right now and trying to get in there as quickly as possible to get themselves ready to go for some more racing action. Now, remembering that this is a 15-minute qualifying session, and the idea behind this, of course, is that our drivers will have to be getting the best possible lapping they can, because this will determine their position for the grid order going into race number 2, which will be the feature-length race, 60 minutes in length, and there will be a mandatory pit stop in there, as all of our drivers will need to take on fuel in the race. They cannot do the race on a single tank of fuel, as all drivers will be required to start with a 75% filled fuel tank. We've got that artificial limiter in there to make sure that they have to take a mandatory pit stop. Tyre changes entirely up to them, of course, but we will wait and see what happens over the course of the racing distance. But before we get there, we have to get through qualifying. And we can see at the moment that we've got Everett making his way around and onto his opening flying lap. Let's jump on board then with Everett, the Ferrari driver, racing as part of the GTE class, and take you through his lap. So making his way through turns 1 and 2, then getting a very nice line there through the opening 2 corners before making his way up into turn 3. Hesitant to get on the power initially, but you can see once he starts to get that nose turned in, the car starts to make its way, barreling down towards turn number 4 once again, building up that speed before going into the heavy braking zone for turn number 4, just gradually rotating the car through. And you can see the difference where there's not as much aero on the GTE cars, but they've got that greater engine power. He's got to be very cautious to get the car turned through the corner, but once it's turned and points in the right direction, it's almost as if he sets off a flare gun in the rear of the car, just absolutely shooting the car forward. It's like a firework, a firecracker, and it just absolutely goes as he makes his way uphill through 7 and 8, and now up into turn number 9. Difficult corner, turn number 9, of course, given the fact that he's got to be ever so cautious to not run too wide, as we're hearing that more and more drivers are now making their way out onto the circuit, and the circuit is definitely going to be filled with drivers come the end of this qualifying session. And as they're making their way out of turn number 10 and up into 11 now, you can see that Everett doing a very nice job right now, keeping the car composed, keeping it together, just making his way through each corner one by one, and just keeping his head in the game, making his way downhill now through 12 and heading up to 13 to complete the lap. And this is going to be one of our opening flying laps, and the opening flying lap here will be from Everett. It is going to be, if we get our timings up on screen, it is a 140.3. That is the opening lap set by a GTE car. Meanwhile, Martin, by comparison, making his way around on the circuit right now. Martin is going to be the first of our GT3 drivers to complete a lap, as we say hello to Sweet Love in the chat. And, well, we're all doing well here, thank you, Love. All doing good, thank you. I'm glad to hear that you're getting interested in the Next Gen Racing streams with a Circuit Corsa competition and iRacing, which you're seeing here today. Definitely in multiple formats, and we've got plenty of action ahead of you, that is certain. And if you are tuning in right now and you do have iRacing to hand and you have the latest update installed, you still do have the best part of 7.5 minutes to join this race before we get underway. In terms of race number 2, you may qualify at the back as a result, but if you do have iRacing available to you, be sure to look for the hosted race as hosted by NXTGEN Racing and be able to hop into the server and get underway with the racing. Alternatively, jump onto the NXTGEN Racing Discord if you're not already there already and look us up, and you'll be able to get the details. You've got 7 minutes to go, and we'd love to have you out on circuit. But still, looking back to what's happening right now on circuit, we can see that we have got Martin, who's making his way onto another lap, so deciding to abort that lap, instead go onto another one, as we have got Sykes out there right now, and Sykes this time deciding to switch to the Lamborghini. And of course, our drivers are not mandated to use one particular car over the 2 races tonight. They are allowed to switch the cars around because this is a test event, so they can use this as an event to get used to different cars within the category they plan to race in, with the Season 2 series coming up in 3 weeks time. So this one, and we've been running multiple test events each week just gives our drivers the opportunity to get a final feel for the machine that they're going to choose to run over the course of the season. So that's why we really pride these test events and why a lot of drivers are very keen to take part in them, because it gives them a really good real-world basis in terms of, much like it will be when they go into the championship, they can be racing on circuits similar to, if not the same as those in the championship, although no spoilers there, and then it will be the case that they can make the final decision on the car that's best suited for them. As we see Sykes right now, the fastest of our GT3 drivers, albeit the only one to have set a lap, a 46.1, similar to the time we saw from him in race number 1's pre-qualifier, when he saw in the qualifying session that he hit that 46.1, and looking a bit stronger in the Lamborghini this time, Sykes, although I say that and then he immediately decides to rally cross across the gravel there across turn 8. It's almost as if the commentator's curse. Every time I say somebody's doing a reasonable good job or doing a good job of racing, something horrific seems to happen. I hope that curse doesn't apply every single time. As we check in with race control, we're not hearing anything else at the moment, so everybody is just making their way back onto the circuit. No major drama, and all is okay. As we take a further look around, and I believe we are expecting Emmons to return to the circuit at some point. Right now, though, we have got Lack, and remember, Lack last time out was in P2. He was running in the Chevrolet Corvette GTE, but now this time making his way down towards turn 1 in the Porsche 911 GTE instead. So deciding to change up the machinery here is Lack, going for a slightly different machine, albeit I actually think that Lack has decided that, well, we had a little bit of lag there, so I think everything's okay. Lack just making his way through the corners. I think that will stabilise a bit later on, as we see Everett right now continue to make his way around the circuit and putting in some fantastic times. As what I can also tell you is that Addy, who started off in the GT3 category, has now decided to switch to a rather fetching liveried Ferrari 488 GTE Evo. Now that is a very nice livery there, very nice Falcon livery, and my goodness, that has really taken my heart by surprise. I think Lack knows the way to my heart, well, not Lack, my apologies, Addy knows the way to my heart in terms of liveries, and that is one to talk about for the generations, as he makes his way through turn 2 then, and is giving it a bit of a try in terms of the GTE machines, as we see right now that Lack there with what was a rather dismal lap, but I think he's getting himself warmed up, and he's making his way through at turn number 10 right now, and he's going green in both sectors. That first lap was just simply a feeler lap, and now he's doing a proper lap, as we're hearing that Tom Delaney has gone out off the circuit, and we are going to get some camera skips from Lack there, but it's not on our side. I think that might just be a small technical issue, as he decides to teleport his way around to the end of the lap here, and well, as he makes his way around the final corner here, let's see what he sets in terms of lap time, as we hear that Colin Martin has set a 45.0, moving him up the order. And Lack actually backing out of it completely there as he crosses the line, looking to set another lap in short order. So that was a 45.4 there. Not feeling perhaps happy, and perhaps just giving himself more time to get used to the Porsche machine at his disposal. But right now, Colin Martin, you'll remember him from last time, doing a solid performance, albeit it didn't all quite go his way in the GT3 class, and bringing out the BMW M4 GT3 once again. He's already jumped Sykes in terms of lap time here, as he makes his way out of turn number 4 and down towards turn number 5. As he does so, of course, getting a nice run there through turn number 5 before coming up through turn 6 and into 7. You can see very composed in the German machine is the British driver, as he now makes his way into the left-hander and up the rolling hill here. And as he goes through, we can see that Addy has now set an indicative time of 42.3 in the GTE category there. The Ferrari driver 2 seconds off of our current pole sitter in the GTE category. But focusing on Martin right now, he's improved in Sector 1. He's set the fastest of anybody in Sector 1. He does the same in Sector 2. This is looking a good lap from Martin. The previous sector being a 41.09. That sector 2 there, a very strong sector, and now making its way up through turn number 11. The question will be, can anybody within the GT3 class match him or go one step further, as he's now only got 2 corners to go before he completes this lap. We've only got 2 minutes of qualifying remaining as well, so it may be the case that a number of drivers opting not to head out onto the circuit as part of qualifying and just deciding to go out there in the purposes of the race, as he makes his way across the line then, and Martin setting at what was there, I believe, a 44.6, and as a result of that improving a little bit. In fact, that lap was not a 44.6, it was a 45.09 in the end, and as a result Martin improving but not moving any further up the order, given that he is the current pole sitter in the GT3 category. As we say hello to Can't Shake the Cliche in the Twitch chat right now. And it's good to see you here, Cliche. And for those who are wondering, Cliche is one of the senior administrators and writers for, and I believe he is the founder, in fact, of the Digital Car Culture magazine, which covers multiple sim racing articles such as and including iRacing. So do be sure to check that out, Digital Car Culture, if you are interested. But coming back to the racing here and now, of course, we look around for Martin Moore for the qualifying. And we can see that Mark Sykes making his way down towards turn number 1 and still getting himself up to grips with the Lamborghini here. You can see he is gradually improving, just little by little right now is Sykes as he's making his way around on the circuit. And really it's Martin who's the fastest of anybody in that GT3 category, as we do also have Stock who's gone a bit wide there out of turn number 3, and that is going to be an aborted lap as a result. And Stock deciding to go to the Lamborghini once again within the GT3 category and doing a reasonable job with it, and I think it is the case as he makes his way down towards turn number 5, having a good run into the corner here. And well, it's a very smooth lap here from Stock, and that's one thing we can count on from Stock. We did see that in race number 1 in particular, very smooth driving style with the Lamborghini, despite the concentration of that centre of mass towards the rear of the car with the mid-engine rear-wheel drive. But he makes it look so smooth, it's so buttery smooth as he makes his way up the hill through turn number 9 and towards turn number 10, and as he makes his way out the corner there, sending a couple of the cones flying, a little bit of a track limits incursion and backing out of it immediately, knowing that lap has been invalidated. Oh, goodness me, and I think there that... well, I believe that was the Porsche of Edward Lack. I think that was Edward Lack who went straight into the back of him. That was an absolute nightmare moment for Lack going into the back of the Lamborghini driver. And that is going to be their qualifying sessions at the end of the day. As we can see that all of our drivers now coming to the end of their current lap, if they're not already done. And we can see that Mark Sykes right now finishing off a lap as he comes down the hill here. Is it going to be an improvement from the British driver? The English driver making his way out the final quarter, going a bit wide off the apex. They're carrying a bit too much speed, but he comes around. He's got to beat a 44.6. He's not going to be able to, but he does improve to a 45.6. A nice effort there from the Briton, and as a result of that, he will be starting P2 in the GT3 category. As we can see Everett taking pole for the GTE category ahead of Addy and Lack, and also I believe Taylor is in the mix there as well. And pole position for the GT3s is going to go to Martin, unless Seeger has got anything to say about it, but I don't think he has. So very shortly we will be getting underway with the race. And I believe we do have some other drivers who will be joining. It's not going to be the case that we're only going to have 7 drivers out on the grid. Although if we do, as we see the Seeger deciding to mate the Porsche there with the wall and get rid of the bonnet altogether. And I think Seeger's just having a little bit of an anger management moment at the moment, just getting the frustration out the car before getting underway with his racing. But right now we are waiting to get underway then with the second race of the evening, the feature length race, as we just wait to see if race control's got anything to say. Nothing from race control at the moment, as we are just waiting to get underway then with the rolling start for race number 2. And we'd just like to say a quick thank you to Can't Shake the Cliche for subscribing with Prime. That's 2 months now on a 1-month streak. Thank you very much, Cliche. But whilst we're rating then, what can we make as in terms of predictions then for the race this time around? Well, I think the big prediction that we can potentially make is that if Everett can get a good start in the GT category, I think he's going to run away again, but of course the strategy element will come into play. But the bigger question will be in the GT3 category, as all of our drivers are getting set right now, particularly as we transition over to the race then, and everyone's going to start lining up on the grid. How will Stock get on? And that is, I think, the biggest question of the lot is, where will Stock finish? Given the fact he's going to be starting on pole, he had a very solid race in race number 1, and he is looking the most promising of the drivers there, but we'll have to wait to see what he's able to achieve. And also Mark Sykes, can he find a way of just calming things down a little bit, getting rid of the mistakes, and getting himself further up the order? But of course, the favourite in terms of winning at the moment is most likely going to be Martin, what the fact that he has qualified in that P1 position, and we hope to see him move up the order fast and furiously. Everybody gets set right now as we're waiting to get underway with the rolling start, and we will be taken away behind the safety car there, but it will be Everett who leads everybody around with Addy alongside him here, and then behind it is going to be a Lack who will join us shortly in P3 in the GTE category most likely. As we see, we do have that space on the grid right now for Lax. We are just waiting for him to get himself out onto the track. And we've also got Matt Emmons there. He's currently sat in P6 for the GT3 category, and Matt will be looking to rise up from the back of the field here as we're about to get underway with the rolling start. So the rolling start begins with the formation going into turn 10, so the sector 3 formation lap begins, and we can see as our drivers make their way through here that Everett will look to repeat what he did in race number 1 of getting the best possible launch off the line and just gunning it down towards turn 1. He had a gap of approximately 4/10 of a second coming out of turn 1. That's exactly what he wanted. He nailed it at the start, and he'll be looking to do it again, of course, as behind him you can see that Martin right now, with Lack alongside him as they make their way up the hill here into turn number 12, Lack being the disappearing car, of course, which I hope doesn't compromise any drivers. But what can Martin do here? Can he potentially get Lack between himself and some of the other drivers and use Lack as a barrier? We will wait and find out as we do see the pace car jumps into the pits. So we wait now for Everett to take us underway for the for the feature race, the 60-minute long race with the mandatory pit stop. And it's the lights out and away we go, and you can see how Everett nailed the start, and so much so in fact that Addy having a very slow start, and you can see that Lack going for the move on the left hand side, and immediately here he's going to look to the outside in the drag race down towards turn 1, but I think Addy's coming back now. He started to get his feet planted, but Lack going for a huge move around the outside here on very cold brakes and cold tyres, and he goes around, and that is very nicely done by Lack as he makes his way through the corner, and you can see now up into a P2 as we've got a small glitch on our timing screen on the left hand side. We will try and fix that shortly for you folks, but meanwhile we're going to do everything by eye and ear as we can see behind right now Delaney side by side right now with Taylor as they go up into turn number 4. Looking where Seeger, in fact, he's side by side with it as they make their way through the corner here, and Seeger falling behind a little bit as Delaney gets the inside line. But will Seeger come back in? Will the German be able to do it on the brakes here? I think the cold brakes, it is still going to work. Seeger's got himself there, but Delaney taking the smoother exit line, and Sykes as a result of that will now find himself trying to jump into this battle for what is effectively P2 in the GT3 class as they make their way uphill here. And I can tell you that Taylor has moved up to P4 and cleared the GT3 pack in the end, being in the GT machine. But now as they make their way through turn 9 here, they all fall into sequence for a little bit as they come through the corner. Sykes going a little bit wide there and saying hello to the cones, and immediately going off the line there and avoiding going defensive. He hasn't got the speed as they go into turn number 10, and you can see there that Payne, there's contact between Payne and Stock there, and Payne knocking the driver off the circuit there as we see it rising up through the order right now. We do have, well, that's not Payne who's not the driver off, my apologies, that is Stock was knocked off, and I think that was Emmons who caused the incident there. We're just going to take another look at what happened. So yeah, that was Emmons making the mistake under braking just a little bit too adventurous and sending Stock off into the sand pit there to go and make some sandcastles. But they've returned, and Sykes, well, as soon as we come back and we can see that Sykes having the mother of all offs, as indeed has another driver, and I think that was Addy in fact ahead of him who had the off. Oh, what on earth has happened to Addy here? He's gone into the wall. I think that was an off from Addy, and that's the gravel line that we could see. So Addy, a lot of drivers being caught out by the car just not being in the right condition that they want at this point in the race, as we do need to try and get that timing screen fixed. I must admit, folks, we will try and find a way of getting that fixed for you. But as things continue to go on right now, we can see that as the drivers are making their way round, it is a case that Everett under a lot of pressure this time from Lack. Everett being under more pressure than last time as we jump on board with Lack temporarily to see what he is able to achieve coming down into turn number 6 and 7. And I don't think he's going to be close enough this time as they make their way up the hill now towards turn number 9. We listen in. And you can see coming out of turn 9, it's just the case that Everett able to get a much better line out of the corner, and as a result of that, Everett just gradually pulling away as they make their way through the turn 10 hairpin right now. And now coming up the hill towards 11, you can see it's in the acceleration zones where initially the Porsche Black just seems to be a little bit stronger, but as soon as it's a handling sector where it's all about the rotation, as Black gets a little bit too much on the power there, a little bit too soon, we can see just falls back once again. And it's Everett who just looks that a little bit more composed, as Taylor behind also in the Porsche machine trying to catch up to the battle for the race lead in the GT class. But meanwhile, with Addy having that major mistake, Colin Martin right now being in at P1 in the GT3 category and P4 overall, with Addy quite a way down the order, and Martin having a very happy day of things right now as he continues to make his way around the circuit and pushes onwards all the same. Now we are just going to fix that timing tower for you. In fact, it doesn't seem to want to fix itself right now, so as a result we are going to have to deal without that timing tower. And as we can see, looking further back right now, we have got Addy making his way, starting to scythe his way through the order, as I think we've got the clouds coming over on the circuit. That's not rain, is it? It's just the clouds coming over, I think. But we will wait and see as they all make their way up through turn number 3 once again here. And it is the case that we have got Addy in a sort of battle here with some GT3s, and behind it is Delaney under pressure from Seeger, and Seeger using the fact that essentially Addy created a doorway there in order to try and get up the inside, but Delaney saying no and getting himself back ahead through turn 4. So Seeger trying to be tactical is the German, but it didn't quite work out there as they make their way through turn number 5 and now head down towards 6 and 7 once again. And as they charge down there, it is the case that right now neither driver able to find a way past one another, though you can see Delaney getting a little bit wrong on the brake, in fact locking up the brakes there, and that's caused him to go wide out of turn number 7. You could just see the smoke come up where he locked the brakes, and as a result of that, Delaney almost getting it cataclysmically wrong, and Emmons now up into P3 in the GT3 class and chasing down Seeger in fast fashion as he comes down towards turn number 10 here, the BMW M4 driver, and just trying to do everything he can in order to catch up to the top step of the GT3 class. Of course, he's got to get through Seeger first, who is the P2 man ahead of him, but he is closing in at a significant rate of knots as they make their way out of the corner. Now turn number 11 and into turn number 12. As they come charging down here, you can see that neither driver right now making any major mistakes, but definitely looking as though it is a case that the P3 man of Emmons is stronger of the two of them as they make their way down the straight. But then as they get onto the straight here, you can see how Emmons starts to fall back a little bit. The Porsche Seeger just looking that bit stronger, and then when they come into the braking zones and the handling zones, that's where they start to contract together again. And meanwhile, further around on the circuit, what I can tell you right now is that Sykes trying to find his way back up into the order, having dropped 4 places since the start, and he has got a nice gap to stock. Now, one thing that should also be pointed out at this point, folks, is that if our drivers do pick up any damage when they come into the pits, they have access to one fast repair, as it's known, and that is going to give them the opportunity to quickly repair a lot of the damage on the car, but they only get the one fast repair, so if they pick up any further damage and have to come into the pits, it will be a full extension pit time in terms of they have to repair the damage normally. It's really the case that they're giving the pit crew there some super caffeine in order to get the first repair job done, but then that wears them out significantly when they come in for the second repair job, as many of you will probably be aware in your working careers when you've had to drink some coffee after a late night or you've had a bad night's sleep. But still, focusing away from sleep and pit stop times and coming back to the racing ahead, I believe we have just had a Nigel stop past Mark Sykes, but I think Sykes has actually had an off, and that is what's contributed to it. Yep, definitely. What on earth happened to Sykes there? He's just returned to the circuit right now. So as he was coming through turn number 7, he was looking so composed in the Lamborghini in qualifying and just bringing the rear end around too much and clattering the wall on the inside as a result through turn number 7. A lot of drivers being caught out here by the fact the car just doesn't necessarily have the grip or has too much rotation in the case of the mid-engine rear-wheel drive GT3 machines in particular. But meanwhile, up front, what I can tell you is that Everett, Lack and Taylor are the closest the three have ever been, and Everett in particular under huge pressure here as we see Taylor at the rear of your camera shot right now all over the back of Lack, and I think one of them has got to give at some point in terms of somebody is either going to make a mistake or it's going to be the pressure gets too much and then they start to get caught up. As we look to Everett right now and we take a look at the cameras behind him, as we get that rear chase camera, and you can see just how close it is from Lack to Taylor as a result of this. And our top 3 right now, the closest they have ever been. This is a very different story from what we saw in race number 1, where it was the case that effectively Everett just ran away with things, whereas now it is more the case that the three of them are literally only separated by well, not even a second, half a second between all three of them, as we see Lack looks for the move on the inside here into turn number 10, but he's not able to get it, and that cost him a bit of momentum as he comes out of the corner and then makes his way up towards turn number 11. And will this be an opportunity here for Taylor to find his way into the mix? Not quite. Taylor not able to find that position as they make their way through turn number 11 and up into turn number 12, but you be rest assured that these three are very close to one another right now, and it could be the case at any point somebody makes a mistake, and as a result of that it could be a move is on, as we see they all make their way down towards turn number 1 once again, going on to lap number 5 right now, and this pack being very clear of Addy, who is the fourth and only fourth driver in the GTE class. As they make their way into turn 1, it is a move up the inside then from Lack. He gets it nailed on the brakes, but Everett goes a long way round the outside to the inside of turn 2, and Lack having to go so deep on the brakes and get off the power because he saw that Everett tried to go around him. As a result, now looking very exposed, and in fact we can see that Taylor making the move up into P2 and now looking for the double move up into P1. Can Taylor get it done here? He looks up the inside versus Everett into turn number 4, and it's a very strong move there by Taylor, just simply having the momentum with the two guys in front of him were battling for so long, and as a result of that we can now see that Taylor up into the race lead as Everett locks the brakes there. The left hand front brake in particular locked up. You could see the brake duct dust coming off of the brake there, and now as they make their way in towards turn 7 we have had a change for the lead in the GTE category, with Taylor in the Porsche 911 GT getting ahead of the Ferrari of Taylor. And I think Lack at this point is going to be kicking himself and thinking, what do I have to do in order to beat Everett? Forget Taylor, what do I have to do to get past the Ferrari in front of me? It just seems to have an answer for everything I do. And you can see already how Taylor is pulling away from these two, as he's already pulled out the best part of what is approximately 0.6 of a second over them right now. And they make their way up into turn number 11. And that gap just opening up a little bit as they continue to make their way up the hill now and then down into turn number 12. But meanwhile, looking further back right now, Colin Martin, the British driver here, having a very solid time in P1 in the GT3 category. He's got the best part of 8.4 seconds, as you can see in the bottom right hand corner of your screen there, over Emmons, and it is the case that very comfortable right now in his position and just taking his time. And I think he'll be thinking to himself right now, I don't need to do anything extreme, just keep this together, keep it solid, and bring it home in due time, as he continues to make his way around the circuit. As he comes down into turn 12 and 13, we look a little bit further back, and you can see in terms of other drivers right now, in terms of those relative gaps to one another, we have got Ben Payne, who is gradually starting to chase down Stock at this point. He's got a 2-second window to Stock. Payne in a rather fetching livery BMW M4. They're very different from what we've previously seen, switching his car up between the races, and that is one livery which I think some people will see as a Marmite livery. You either love it or you hate it, as he makes his way through turn number 13. But we look back up to our racers at the head, and we have had an incident involving Everett. Everett has crashed. Let's see what has happened for our P2 man. So coming down to turn at number 1, then you're going to see Lack goes to the inside here, but under braking. Did Everett just go too deep on the brakes? No, there was a little bit of contact there from Lack, and Lack had spun Everett out as Everett just made his way along there, and Everett will not be best pleased with that. Lack there with a little bit of contact as he's got the car spun around and got himself underway once again. I think Everett now will do his utmost to try and fathom a strategy in order to get back into the fight versus Lack and Taylor, and keep in mind that Taylor has already pulled 3 to 3.5 seconds over Lack because of the battle in between Everett and Lack. Now, very quickly looking at our P4 man, we can see Addy here having a very difficult time going off the circuit there, as I'm hearing Ben Payne has had a horrific crash. What has happened to the P6 driver? So making his way out of turn at number 3 then, I think we're going to see, because that was turn 4 where he was off. Does the brakes just disengage completely as he makes his way into the braking zone here? In fact, the car just seems to stop. Just something goes very wrong, and he parks it up onto the gravel here. So Payne not having a good day at the office. Clearly something technically wrong with the car, but it is just beached right now at turn number 4. And Payne not able to get that car started. So we're going to have yellow flags going into Sector 2 effectively, because the Sector 1 timing line is just literally as you come up to the braking zone here. That's when the Sector 1 timing line ends. And as a result, you move into Sector 2. But we can see Taylor and Lack right now. Well, Taylor's got Lack all over the back of him. Lack is literally storming right now, all over the back of our race leader. And I think Taylor might have made a little mistake as well, although saying that, as they make their way out of turn number 5. Lack really pushing hard right now and getting right up the backside of Taylor, and you have to imagine that some fireworks are going to kick off between these two in a very short order as we just attempt to reset our time screens very shortly for you folks. So give us 1 second and everything should get reset, although I don't think it has. There we go, we've got everything reset for you. So as a result, you can now see the live deltas on screen, which helps us all out, doesn't it, in terms of following the race in action. But what we do know right now is that these two are really close together out on circuit, but it is very difficult as we see that we do have Delaney out of the race. So Delaney has had to retire the car, and I believe Sykes is in the pit lane right now having some work done on the car. I think Payne may also be contemplating a pit stop soon, but right now this is the closest battle out on circuit. We have got Taylor being chased by Lack, and literally they have got up to this point only very recently, albeit they now come down the start-finish straight to go on to a lap number 8 here, and the question will be, will Lack be able to find a way past Taylor, or will it be a case of a bridge too far, as we see Roy Weller there raiding with a party of 1. Good to see you, Roy, hope you're doing well in the Twitch chat, and as they make their way through turn number 1, I'm very grateful to that, Roy. We note that Taylor and Lack both making the same mistake there, going through at turn number 1. Both of them going very deep on the brakes, and I think both of these drivers get into a point right now where I think they've worked so hard in order to get up into the race lead positions and get away from Everett that they're actually starting to push the car too hard. Because remember, that's really what happened with some of the drivers further back in race number 1 in the GT3 category. In the end, they were racing so hard that they were starting to let mistakes creep in. And I think for Everett, this is a blessing in disguise right now, because finding himself out of the battle for lead as is its time, it means that he can focus more on the car management, because we still do have 45 minutes of this race to go. It's not as though this race is over yet or coming to its climax. It's got a long way to go before it gets to its climax, but instead it becomes the case that for Everett, who is our man currently down in P3, who you're looking at right now, he can now focus on just gradually getting himself back up to pace and chasing these guys down. And to give you an idea of the lap times, we know that Aaron D. Taylor must have made a mistake on the previous lap because he set a 43.4. Lack set a 41.9, but the fastest man out of all of our GTE cars was, at the end of the day, Everett with a 41.6. So you can tell that Everett's definitely got a plan there. He's just trying to find a way back into this race and trying to get himself back into that top position. But he'll do it strategically now rather than looking to do the overtake immediately out on circuit. But he is 5.4 seconds down now, as we do see that Taylor and Lack, the closest the two have ever been in this battle for P1, as they make their way down towards turn 1 once again. As they come into the braking zone here, I think Lack's going to go for the move on the inside. He peels out to go for the move, and into the braking zone they go, and up the inside goes Lack, albeit he disappears very briefly, and Taylor tries to continue around the outside, and Taylor continues that defense. Lack just cannot find a way through, but he's going to look for the cut back here into turn number 3 is Lack, as they make their way through the corner and up towards turn number 4, and you can see that Lack is really wanting to take the lead off of Taylor at this point. He feels he's most likely the faster driver compared to the two of them, although I should point out, ladies and gentlemen, that on that previous lap these two took 3 seconds off of one another, as Everett is catching up to them quite rapidly right now. He set a 41.26 on the previous lap as they make their way out of turn number 5 and down towards 6 and 7. Now coming down into left into right combination of 7 to 8 here, you can see Lack going a little bit sideways there, a little bit of snap oversteer as he came out of turn 7, and I think this is where we were saying about earlier, the drivers are really pushing themselves hard in the CXR race cars there as they make their way up towards turn number 10, and I think for Lack right now, he needs to think whether he really wants to push this hard right now, because he's clearly got the pace to put pressure on Taylor, but what cost is it coming to him as he's doing these laps, and you can see just how hard he's having to work in order to get into that position to race after the race leader. You can see that Taylor is making mistakes over the course of the lap. It's small mistakes that add up, but at the same time the concern would be, or at least my thought process would be in the case of Lack, well, do I really want to push this hard knowing that Taylor could make a mistake at any moment? Of course, the flip side is, as you can see, that Lack actually goes wide and almost takes the DRS board home as a souvenir, as many of our drivers have tried to do so. That is the case that Lack is starting to just make little mistakes as well, and perhaps I'll take the pressure off of Taylor if he sees Lack making mistakes, whereas if Lack sits behind Taylor approximately a second back, he'll always be there and he can keep Taylor under that pressure, if you see where we're coming from. So as a result of that, it's the case, I think Taylor right now is the one who's under the ultimate pressure, but Lack doesn't need to Okay, we are back, ladies and gentlemen. Very sorry about that. I'm not sure what happened there with the connectivity, but the stream is back up now, or at least I believe it is. Let me know in the Twitch chat if it is, please. But the stream dropped out very briefly there. So we're just having some slight technical gremlins, as they love to nibble their way through wires. Indeed, the gremlins do. But right now, no change between the race. Well, I say there's no change. There has been a change between the race leaders. That Lack has passed Aaron D. Taylor for P1. How that will happen, let's take a look. So Taylor made a mistake coming out of turn number 9, and you could see there that Lack was just able to go up the inside and get it done into turn number 10. And now I think Lack's going to see if he can break away. And remember what I was saying earlier? Taylor was making mistakes, or looking like he was going to make mistakes, as we've got Ben Payne jumping into the pits from what was at the time P5, and he's coming into the pits now. I believe Sykes at this point, they boxed the car and they are not going to be bringing it out again. And what about Payne? We will find out, as we have only passed the 90-minute mark, and I think Payne has parked up as the drivers continue to make their way around on circuit. And now Everett's got to try and find a way back into that fight for the race lead, as Taylor and Lack are the closest they've ever been still, and making their way through turn number 7. And as they make their way uphill now into turn number 8, it's going to be the case between the two of them. What can one of them achieve? Will they be able to break away? Well, the two of them are so close together right now. You can barely separate the two of them, literally by a hair's width, as they make their way down into turn number 10 once again. Lack going defensive to the inside, Taylor around the outside here. He's trying to go the long way round, but not able to find it, not able to find the grip, as they now come up into turn number 11, and Lack going defensive on the inside. But you can see what Taylor's trying to do. He's trying to take wide entry lines into the corners. He's trying to go deep in order to get on the throttle early once he's got the nose rotated. But as he makes his way through turn 12, Lack going a little bit wider there, and as they come into 13, no change between the two of them this time, but Taylor extremely close to the back of Lack. And well, it will be the case, I'm sure, that within the next couple of laps we may see a move, as it is so close between the two of them. Taylor slightly faster on that lap by a 10th, as they make their way into the braking zone for turn 1 once again, and Taylor just sitting in the slipstream of Lack as they make their way through sector number 1. Meanwhile, taking a look back to our GT3 drives, Martin right now 1.3 seconds ahead of Emmons, and it should be pointed out that Emmons did pass Seeger a little bit earlier in the race, so as a result Emmons now chasing after Martin and closing that gap down hand over fist lap over lap. Emmons making up a lot of ground. He got past Seeger about 3 to 4 laps ago whilst we were focused on the battle for the GTE lead, but meanwhile these guys making their way up towards turn number 12 right now to come towards the end of their current lap, that lap being lap number 11. As they make their way out the corner, they'll be going on to lap number 12, but you can see that Emmons on his previous lap, well, this lap he's just coming to the end of, it was a 45.2, whereas Martin a 45.4. So as a result of that, 2 tenths of a second being shaved off, and Emmons closing down the gap to Martin very rapidly indeed, as he's dropped Seeger, who was on a 46.0 there, as we are hearing that Nitro Stock has had a little run off circuit. Stock being in at P4 in the GT3 class right now, having a small run off there at turn 13, but nothing major, just running a little bit wider track limits, but that has been picked up by the automatic stewards. But meanwhile up front in that battle for the race lead once again, well, in fact we've got these two running together still, although I can tell you that Emmons right now getting very close to the back of Martin as we jump on board with the second of the two BMW drivers to see what is happening. And right on board the nose of Emmons right now, as we take a look back from his car briefly, although we won't be doing that, you can see pushing ever forward, but Martin getting the better run out of turn 5 versus Emmons here, as they come up into turns 7 and then into 8, and it's looking at very strong from Emmons as he's making his way up the hill here towards turn number 9 and cutting into the right hander here. It's going to be the case of which driver flinches first as they make their way down towards turn number 10, and it looks as though Martin actually having the better run out of 9 into 10 by comparison with Emmons there. And I think it may be the case that just being affected a little bit by the dirty air off the back of Martin's car right now is Emmons, and just feeling that the aerodynamics aren't offering him as much downforce as he would like, and there's much handling through the corners, and as a result of that he's just got to rethink his approach about where he gets close to Martin in order to try and affect the pass, because Emmons is the faster driver in circuit, we believe, but it is the case of when is he going to be able to do it. As I can tell you that right now Taylor has repassed Lack for P1. This is how it happened. So Lack locking up the brakes there through turn number 5 under braking, and as they made their way through 6 and up into 7 here, what you're going to see, we're looking at Taylor right now at the front of your camera, Taylor just settling into the lead through turn number 7, but these two continuing to fight and not letting one another go. So as they make their way through 6 and up into 7 here, what you're going to see, we're looking at Taylor right now at the front of your camera, Taylor just settling into the lead through turn number 7, but these two continuing to fight and not letting one another go. So as they make their way through 6 and up into 7 here, what you're going to see, we're looking at Taylor right now at the front of your camera, Taylor just settling into the lead through turn number 7, but these two continuing to fight and not letting one another go. As we see, Emmons now 1.2 seconds still off of the back of Martin, and gradually catching up to him as they make their way uphill now and press forward once again. The Stock, meanwhile, still in P4, having a peaceful time of it. He is the best part of 7 seconds down. What I can tell you is that Payne, Sykes and Delaney have all retired the car. So we've had 3 retirements so far in race number 2. We've still just under 40 minutes to go. That being Payne, who retired 4 laps ago, so on what was at the time lap number 9. Sykes a bit before that, and Delaney a further 3 laps before that. As we see that Everett is into the pit, so this is interesting. So is Everett just taking an extended stop right now and clearing his stop out of the way, or is this going to potentially be another car being retired? We'll find out in due course for you folks, but he has jumped to the pits as they make their way down towards turn number 4, our race leaders, and you can see that Taylor breaking away a little bit right now, as meanwhile in that battle for the race lead in the GT3 category, Emmons versus Martin. Martin is still a good chunk of time ahead, 7/10 of a second ahead, but Emmons the closest he has been in a while here and trying to push forward. The stream is back up, and thank you for confirming there, Mr. Dark Sykes, and also Zeronic in the Twitch chat. Yeah, we seem to have a brief cut out there, but it was only a brief drop, so that's great to hear, as all of our drivers are making their way through at turn number 12 and up into 13, and we can see that right now it is the case that Emmons are closing up to the back of Martin, and doing so very gradually. Both of them running identical liveries here, but we can distinguish them, of course, thanks to the power of digital computing, as they make their way down towards turn number 1 for the 15th time of asking. As they come down here, we'll ride with the gearbox of Martin as we look back, and you can just see the grille of Emmons getting ever closer. It looks as though the BMW M4 behind just wants to swallow up Martin, essentially take the place away from him as they make their way along. And thank you for confirming, Dark Sights, that you've had to retire the car in the chat. Very sorry to hear that, but thank you for racing tonight. That's Mark Sykes there, who is in P6 and will finish in P6 in race number 2 for the GT3. But focusing on the here and now, the battle for the race lead, you can see that Emmons versus Martin, 0.6 of a second is the gap between the two of them. And I think the big question right now between these two is who's going to be the first one to flinch and make a mistake, or alternatively go for that pit stop. And I think really that Emmons finds himself in the more controlled situation, because he knows he can get himself into this tow as they make their way up towards turn 9. He knows he can get into that position to be on the offensive if he so desires. It's through certain corners, particularly through turn 9, where he loses out time because he loses that downforce. But then as he goes onto the straights, he's starting to catch back up. And also sector 3, he's not too bad through sector 3, is Emmons, who is gradually closing up to them there as they make their way into turn number 11 very shortly. Now, meanwhile, up front, I can tell you that the battle of the 2 Porsche 911 GTEs, that Lack is now approximately 1 second behind Taylor. We're looking at Taylor right now. We'll see Lack in the rear of the camera very shortly. But these two are not really close together at this point in time, and what that really tells us is the fact that it's not a case that the battle between them is over, but it seems as though Lack is now falling off a little bit, or just settling back into a rhythm rather than trying to put the pressure on. These two, of course, having lapped everybody so far, as we are to understand it, or coming up to lapping the rest of the GT3 class. But these are the only 2 drivers remaining, I believe, in terms, well, no, we have got one other driver in the GTE category, and that is Addy, who after having that horrific incident earlier on now finds himself the best part of 58 seconds down on the race leaders in the GTE category. But I can tell you that Alex Everett had to retire the car, so he will be finishing in P4 once all classifications are done in the GTE race here. After what was a brilliant race 1, it's all gone a little bit wrong in race number 2 for Everett, but he'll bounce back, that I'm sure, as we continue to watch the action going on here. And what I can tell you right now is that Emmons has dropped a little bit back from Martin once again, and I think it's the case that we are seeing this sequence whereby he gets close enough to be putting some pressure onto Martin, and then Emmons decides just to back off a little bit because he gets into that dirty air. It affects the flow of the car, and also it just warms the tyres up a little bit too much, and perhaps causes the brakes to warm up a little bit more because he has to do a bit more braking into the heavy braking zones from a straight, particularly the run from turn 13 to turn 1, where he'll get that distant tow, and that increases his run speed down into turn 1. So for Emmons right now, it's one of those cases where I think he's got to try and think of a way of finding a way past Martin elsewhere on the circuit, and most likely through strategy. And that's one of the things as well with Catalunya in particular. It's a circuit where the more aerodynamics you typically have on the car, the harder it becomes to pass, simply because you need the aero going through the corners here, as we can can see Emmons flashing his lights there. I think flashing his lights because he's a little bit aware of the fact the cameras may be on him, but having a good race all the same. And we love to see Emmons enjoying himself as we've got Martin just ahead of him. The two drivers now moving on to what is lap number 16. And then, sorry, lap number 16. Yep, it is indeed. As we look towards Taylor right now, and Taylor being caught up by Lack once again, but I think this is where the pair of them have had to go past Stock there. They've just lapped Stock, and now they're making their way down towards turn number 13. And Stock, by comparison, running at the back of the pack of the GT3s there in that Lamborghini. After having a good initial showing, things have not worked out just as much, but he is chasing after Seeger. He's the best part of 10 seconds down on Seeger right now as they make their way across those timing lines. And we can see that Lack looking very competitive once again versus Taylor. And this has really been the story of this race so far in the GTE category. Lack finds a way past Taylor, then Taylor finds a way past Lack. It's back and forth, and the two of them aren't giving each other the sack in terms of battling. Instead, they're just simply staying nose to tail most of the time, and it is one of those cases where back to back they just want to keep fighting for the position. Of course, I think they'll both be using this, if they're both feeling very comfortable in the Porsche 911 GT right now, they will be using this experience in order to build up that confidence for battling other drivers going into the full season, into season 2 later this month. As we see Lack, they're getting a major brake lock up into turn 5. They're just pushing the car a little bit too hard, and once again I'm hearing in my ear that Emmons is now starting to go for another attack on Martin here. That gap has come down to approximately 1 second from 1.3 seconds as he's making his way up towards turn number 11 here, and I think it's this rinse repeat sequence of he'll take a couple of laps, back off of it, and then he'll go on the attack once again and try to find a way back into the fight as they make their way through turn at number 12 here. And with the race almost at half distance, we've literally got 10 seconds to half distance. We will, of course, be expecting some pit stops from our drivers at some point. They do have a mandatory pit stop here, but the question will be when. As meanwhile, Lack only 6 tenths behind Taylor right now, but that's coming out of turn at number 11. And these two drivers ever close. As Emmons on the last lap, I should tell you, in that battle for leading GT3, half a second faster. As we've got a spin there. That's Jordan Seeger, and oh my goodness, that is Lack right into the out of control car of Seeger there. My dear Lord, Lack is going to be fuming from that one because that was a disaster. Now here is firstly the instant involving Seeger as he made his way through the corner. You are going to see here that he just carries too much speed into turn 13. The car spins, and then Lack coming through the corner. There was nowhere for Lack to go as he was coming through, and I don't think the yellow flags have been started waving there, but Lack is going to be fuming at that, and as a result that could be the deciding factor as to the win in this class, because the gap now has opened up to 5.8 seconds, and of course with the damage received right now as Emmons has made the move here on Martin, and let's see how that happened. Well, Martin getting it very wrong there, in fact, coming out of turn 5, so almost a collision between the two of them, and Emmons having to immediately take to the inside for 6 up into 7 in order to get it done in the braking zone for 7 and then following through up into 8. But you can see here how Martin was all over the back of him initially, but again it's opened up now as they come down into turn number 10, and I think that is representative of the fact that once you get into that toe of the car in front, you start to have that difficulty of staying in the slipstream and indeed the dirty air of the GT3 in front of you. Although, to be fair, Martin doing a very solid job here of just staying right behind Emmons as they make their way through turn at number 12 here. So Martin not having as much difficulty as perhaps we saw with regards to earlier when Emmons in fact going wide there out of turn at 13, and I think just making a little bit of a mistake through the corner but keeping it under control, and Martin back up into the lead. So these two continue to fight, and it's very juicy as they make their way down towards turn number 1, once again going on to lap number 18. Meanwhile, up front, I can tell you that Taylor is now coming into the pits. So this is the opening pit stop from Taylor. So he's the first of our drivers to take a pit stop, which I believe will be a scheduled pit stop rather than a pit stop to retire. And Lack following him into the pits as well, albeit he was a couple of seconds back, and Lack will have to repair the damage on that car. But he does have a fast repair, which you have access to. Meanwhile, Addy making his way up towards turn number 9 right now in P3 in the GTE category, and I don't think we're going to be seeing too much from Addy in terms of batting with the race leaders in the GT, but he'll be looking to bring the car home after that horrific incident earlier on, that mistake as he was coming out of turn 13 onto the start-finish straight. But meanwhile, in the battle for P1 in the GT3 category, we can see that Martin are just holding on to that position right now. Not too much pressure on him, although Emmons getting a really nice launch out of turn 7 and 8 there, and you can see Martin rising over the apex curve there, particularly the little mini sausage curve of turn number 9, and not having the best of runs, and Emmons getting closer once again as they make their way into turn number 10. And Martin going a little bit deep there. Emmons will be looking to try and capitalise on that. He's getting closer once again, is the P2 driver as they make their way through the corner, and Addy up into leaving the GTE category as we hear that Lack and Taylor, well, Lack has actually come out the pits ahead of Taylor here, so this is a change for position thanks to the pit strategy, and of course both drivers will have repaired their cars now, particularly Lack, so Lack will go racing. He has got a 2-second gap over Taylor, and he'll be looking to capitalise on that as Addy just a little bit further up the road. Of course, do keep in mind with Addy that he does have to pit, so this is just positional right now, but it's not the overall strategic P1, it is the positional P1 out on circuit. Taylor will be looking to chase after Lack, I'm sure, very quickly. He's already taken 4 attempts out of Lack in the opening sector alone, as we see that Emmons coming into the pits right now from what was P2 at the time, and Martin staying out on the circuit. So Emmons deciding to try and undercut Martin through the pit stop here, and we'll wait and see whether that works. But in the meantime, as we look a little bit further back, I can tell you that Stock coming across the timing line now to go onto another lap and moving up to P2, as is Siegert here. Both drivers, of course, choosing to stay out, whereas Emmons has decided to pit. But I think as Emmons is coming to the end of the pit lane right now, yep, he is indeed, and he's coming into that pit exit, he'll now be looking to put in 1 or 2 very strong laps in order to try and jump Martin and pull away once Martin comes into the pits. Of course, we'll wait and see whether that does work out as he makes his way out onto the circuit once again. Meanwhile, up front, I can tell you that Addy is gradually being reeled in by Lack. The gap now 2 seconds between these two, and behind them we have got Taylor, who is getting ever closer. Taylor right now 1 second and continuing to close behind the pair of them as they make their way down through 13 and onto the next lap. As they go on to lap number 20, then it is the case that Lack right now, well, no, my apologies, go on to lap 21, I should say. It is the concept right now that Lack is being reeled in rather rapidly by Taylor, and he's going to have the traffic of Addy in front. And remember, Addy can race for position. It's not as though he is a back marker. He is leading this race right now. He just hasn't pitted. He does have to make a pit stop because he won't have the fuel to do it. But will Addy decide to fight? Well, he's had a poor run out of turn 3 initially. Not as much speed coming out the corner as we hear that Martin has come into the pits. So we'll keep our eyes on how the change is there. But look how Lack is being held up by Addy. Addy not driving too defensively, in fact, holding to the inside into turn 5. He is going to go full defensive as Addy, but at the same time, Lack going all the way around the outside here. And will we see Taylor come through at the same time? Well, Addy backs out, but I think he recognises the fact he's not in this battle for the race lead. Although as they make their way into turn 7 here, we can see that both drivers coming up into the corner, and Addy going a bit deep there and missing the corner almost at turn 8, but he gets it back together. But meanwhile, Emmons, as he comes out of the final corner here, well, Martin has come out the pits, and Emmons, as a result of that, well, Martin is the best part of what is, if we do our maths correctly, approximately about 10 seconds up the road from Emmons right now is Martin. So Martin having a masterclass of a pit stop here, and Emmons, well, to give you an idea, in fact, it's more than 10 seconds. Emmons spent the best part of 46 seconds in the pit lane, whereas Martin spent only 31 seconds in the pit lane. So the difference between those two, 15 seconds, and that is translated to the gap you're seeing out on track right now, as we are hearing that Addy has had a run off a circuit. He's made a mistake somewhere. Let's see what happened to Addy. So coming out of turn 11, he's making his way out of the corner here. I think he's going to run wide onto the gravel, and that unsettled the car, and as a result it then sent it onto the inside grass for turn number 12, and then he took to the runoff escape road there in order to avoid anybody else coming through. So Addy there not having the best day at the office as he pulls into the pit for his mandatory pit stop. But what I can tell you right now is in that battle for leading the GT, it's Lack versus Taylor once again, and Lack all over the back of Taylor as they make their way through turn number 4. And as we look back from the gearbox here of Lack, listening to the sound of that wonderful Porsche engine as they make their way into turn number 5 here, it is the case that Taylor looking very feisty on the second stint as Lack makes a small mistake. In fact, that is the mistake which I think is going to give the ability for Taylor to get through. So one little mistake there, Lack just getting on the power too soon, coming out of turn 5 and going wide onto the gravel, and Taylor now up into the lead. But for how long, of course, is the question, because these two have been so closely matched all the way through the race in terms of pace. As we hear right now that Addy is still in the pits, and also on top of that, Stock now coming into the pits in the GT3 category. That's Nigel Stock coming in. Seagate continuing to go around on circuit, in fact, so Seagate being the last of our remaining GT3 drivers, the German driver who you're looking at right now, continuing to stay out there for an extended period of time. Of course, he did have that major incident with Lack a bit earlier on, so he is running with a damaged car right now, but you can see that Emmons is getting closer to the back of him, but then it is a further 15 seconds up the road to Martin for Seeger, and it is going to be a huge effort for Emmons if he's to get back in the fight for the race win, unless, say for example, Martin were to underfueled the car in the pits. But meanwhile, the battle for our race lead, you can see that Lack getting ever closer to the back of Taylor as they go into the braking zone for turn number 1 once again, but Taylor unfazed this time as they make their way up through turns 2 and 3, and then it's the long run round to 4, as we note that Taylor right now looking the more composed of the two, or the more consistent of the two, but Lack looking the faster of the two when he hits his prime, and that's the trade-off. Taylor has been the better driver for consistency, and that seems to be getting him the results, but Lack, as you see, making a little mistake under braking into turn 4, but now starting to put the pressure back on, immediately working on it, as Emmons all over the back of Seagate here. Remember, Seagate not having pitted, and Emmons going for the move up the inside there into turn 10, and I don't think the Porsche driver wanted to fight that one too much, recognising the fact it was going to change at some point, and I think he's going to try and just use a little bit of toe off of Seeger on the straight from, say, turn 11 here to turn 12 just up the road, and then from 12 to 13. Will we see a pit stop from the German on this lap? I suspect we will shortly, because we're coming up to the final 20 minutes. A pit stop should be underway in short order. Not pitting this time, continuing to stay out there is Jochen, but he's making his way around out the final corner and onto his 23rd lap, and as he makes his way down the straight here, I think he's trying to go as long as possible to try and jump Stock, who is the best part of 1 minute and 6 seconds behind him right now. I think Stock had a very long way. He's had a crash, and let's see what happened. So coming out of the pits this was, and Stock going through turn number 1, rides a little bit higher on the curb there, and then coming through turn number 2, the rear of the car just does not settle, and straight into the wall. Stock having a nightmare exit from the pits then, and going onto a lap, and that front nose of the Lamborghini there looking quite compact now by comparison with how it should normally look, as he makes his way down towards turn number 10 and through the corner. But meanwhile, in the battle for the race lead, I can tell you that Lack has been dropped by 1.1 seconds to Taylor right now. Taylor just pulling away a little bit as it currently stands, but of course it could change at any possible moment, and we know that Lack does come alive towards the end of stints as well, or just when he feels that it is the case that everything is in its prime. But he needs the stars to align, of course, and he potentially needs Taylor just to start making a couple of little mistakes here, as the gap between the two of them is the best part of 1.1 seconds right now, and staying at that as it currently stands. Meanwhile, looking down towards our GT3 category, well, Martin right now 17 seconds ahead of Emmons. Emmons having passed Seeger on the previous lap, as we saw, and now it's the case that the two British drivers, will it be the case that we've got Emmons catching up to Martin, or will Martin continue to pull away? We believe that Emmons is the slightly faster driver, but Martin has been the much more consistent driver in terms of when he's had to drive in the dirtier, but the two evenly matched, I should really say, on that regard. That previous lap there from Martin being a 44.8, meanwhile the previous lap from Emmons, as he comes to the end of this lap and goes on to his next one, it is going to be what is a, as he comes across the timeline here, a 45.3. So as a result there, with Emmons having to do quite a bit of battling, that lap dropping off, as we see Addy in the rear view picture, the GTE driver will be catching up to him in very short order as they make their way through turn number 1 once again, and up into 2 and 3, and you can see Addy getting closer as behind them Seeger continuing to stay out there, and I wonder how long it'll be before the German does have to make that pit stop, as right now Lack dropping a further 10th to Taylor on that previous lap, and it's the case that Taylor leading it by 1.1 seconds still, as he's being caught up a little bit through turn 3, and Lack starting to go on the offensive. We'll keep our eyes out for that, as Emmons battling right now with Addy, of course not in the same class here, and backing out of it as they go into turn 5, knowing that there'd be no need to fight with the GTE car here. Emmons being smart and instead tucking in behind and using the toe to take him down towards turn number 7. Now, looking at further down the order, we can tell you right now that Seeger has got a window of 1 minute and 7 seconds over Stock still, what with Stock having that instant coming out the pits, and I think right now Seeger could choose to pit at any time and will be very safe in terms of pitting, as Stock is back into the pits here with the damage on the car, and I think this may be a major repair job, or alternatively it could be a retirement for another GT3 driver. Stock having that huge incident into the wall at turn number 2, and that really has put a spanner spanner in the works for the British driver, as he's currently parked up in the pits, and we'll find out if he's able to come out in short order. But right now the closest battle on circuit is the battle for the race lead and the race win in the GTE category. It's Taylor versus Lack. It has been for the majority of the race, and it's really been the story to tell. We have got just about 17 minutes to go before the end of this race, and we will be sure to let you know how it all boils down in the end. As I can tell you that Seeger has finally come into the pits from what was P3. He's definitely going to hold on to that P3, as Stock is in the pit right now trying to get the car repaired. If they can get that car repaired, they'll get it back out on circuit, but Seeger has done enough to jump himself up into P3 by running long and consistent on the strategy. But we can see right now that Lack, within that 7/10 of a second pit window right now, not pit window, my apologies, within that 7/10 of a second window right now in terms of trying to fight for the P1 position, but just not able to find his way close enough at this time. Taylor just seems to have enough, but again, Lack finding little bits of time. For example, under braking into turn 4, you can see there just how he's closing up to Taylor under braking as they continue to push their way around down into turn 5. Again, you can see now that Lack's starting to strip a little bit of time out of the driver ahead, as we hear that there has been a incident. Addy has had a runoff there. The P3 driver in the GT category has had a small mistake somewhere out on circuit. I believe that was at turn number 8. That's where we've got the gravel mark stretching across the circuit, and we've just got Seeger off camera coming out the pit lane in P3 in the GT3 category, nice and safe. And I can tell you, ladies and gentlemen, that as it currently stands, Stock is still in the pit lane here, so we may be looking at another retirement for a GT3 driver, and it'd be a shame to lose Stock given the fact that he put in such a fantastic effort in the 2 races, but it's all just gone from good to bad to disastrous in the end, and we are down to 3 drivers racing in each of the categories with only 15 minutes to go come the end of this current lap. And you can see right now Taylor and Lack, they are the closest 2 out there, and really it's anyone's guess how this is going to end for the 2 drivers. But meanwhile, Colin Martin having a nice peaceful time of things right now. Probably thinking to himself, okay, well, what else can I test with regards to this car whilst I'm out on circuit, given the fact I've got an 18-second window to play with. And, well, Martin having a very good time around the track. To give you an idea of the comfort zone he's in, that previous lap was what was a 46.3 from Martin, whereas it was something similar from Emmons. It was a 45.9. So Emmons taking 4/10 of a second out of Martin on that lap, but given the fact the gap between these two is 19 seconds, it is the case that Martin can afford per lap to lose, say, 4/10 of a second or even half a second, and it'd still be the case that he'd come home comfortably as the race winner in the GT3 class here today. So as a result, he doesn't have to worry too much, as I'm pleased to tell you folks that Stock has been able to get the car fixed. They've had to put in a lot of repair work on that car, but he has been able to get it out onto the circuit with the pit crew there. So we are going to see the Lamborghini make its way once again out there. It's going to rise and shine as it makes its way down towards turn number 1, and that's fantastic to see as the British driver now continues out there. He's down in P4. He is a lap down on Seagat effectively, but still I think he'll be very happy to know that the car has revived and able to get out there. As we can see, Seagat right now the best part of 1 minute and 3 seconds down on Emmons, and in a very comfortable P3 and just driving contentiously around the circuit right now. Emmons, meanwhile, making his way in at P2, slowly closing down that gap, although Martin coming into the pits here. So as Martin decided to go for the 2-stop here, I'm not hearing that he's had an off or anything, so this is a bit of a surprise, and Martin did have a very short stop. I think that Martin decided to perhaps go for a tyre change or alternatively go for a fuel stop, but I would say that if he went for the fuel stop, it was a limited amount of fuel, but this is going to promote Emmons here up into the lead for the GT3 category. So whatever's got in the mind of Martin, it's definitely the case that it hasn't worked out as he's coming out of the pits right now. I'm not 100% sure what's happened there for Martin, but it's gone a bit wrong, and as a result he's now coming down towards turn number 1, but he's got to try and find his way back into the race for the lead. He is 6 seconds down the road from Emmons as he makes his way out of turn 1. And he's going to have to try and close that gap up as rapidly as possible. And with 13 minutes to go, he's got approximately what I would say to be about 6 to 7 laps to do it. Can Martin do it? Or will Emmons run away with this one now? We'll soon find out. But meanwhile, back up front in the GT category, there's been no real change between Taylor and Lack over the last 2 to 3 laps. These two, the gap has come down very gradually to 4/10 of a second on average, it should be pointed out. But I think it's one of those cases where Lack has now got to that point where he's just trying to eke the pressure onto Taylor here, as that gap now comes down a further 10th, down to 3/10 of a second as they make their way down towards turn number 10. Once again, for what is the 28th time of asking. And as they make their way through the corner here, you can see that essentially what Taylor's having to do now is think about, okay, well, we've only got a short amount of time, and now it's one of those assessments where he's got to nail every corner and look out for where Lack's going to be stronger, where Lack is able to gain time versus where Taylor himself is able to gain time, and way up where he needs to be a bit more defensive. Now in Lack's position, I think the question will be, when do you start looking at when do you start looking to go on the offensive? Do you immediately do it, or do you wait until the last couple of laps? Well, if you wait later, then as a result of that, it's going to be the case that you can probably, as a result of that, just put more pressure on your opponent. But in return, the later you leave it, the less time you have to make the move. And I think that's what Lack is doing right now. He's getting closer and he's putting pressure on. And I think within the next 2 to 3 laps, he might start looking for a move, just simply because the time is running out. As they make their way then up towards turn number 4 once again, they have got the traffic in the form of Addy ahead of them. Lack looking a little bit on the inside this time into turn 4, and he's already getting himself lined up. And I think that's where he'll look to make the move. It will be into turn 4 because Lack has the better run out of turn number 3 by a considerable margin compared to Taylor on average. And that's where he looks very strong as they now make their way out of turn 5 and up towards 6 and 7. And you can see here how Lack is getting closer and closer and really tightening the noose on Taylor's lead right now, and trying to essentially cut it off at the source and trying to take that lead back for himself. As they make their way through turn number 9, they are going to have the traffic of Addy, which will be on their minds collectively right now in terms of, for Taylor, how that's going to hold him up, and for Lack, how he can potentially use that to gain an advantage on Taylor and use when Taylor gets past Addy in order to follow through and not lose any time in the pursuit. As they both make their way now up the hill towards turn number 11 once again. Both drivers, of course, together. You can see Taylor just going a little bit deep once again through turn number 11, and the pair of them just looking inseparable right now. But Lack definitely coming alive now with only 10 minutes of this race remaining, and I think this is one for Lack that if he's going to do it, he's going to do it soon, as we see Addy pulling off the racing line there in order to let Taylor come through, and Lack using the toe there of Taylor to pull him along a little bit as they make their way down towards turn number 1. And Taylor, in fact, going out onto the dirt there very briefly, and that could have been a little bit disastrous there for Taylor. He's got some dirt on the left-hand tyres right now. He's going to have to be very careful with that dirt on his tyres as they make their way up through turn number 3, and Lack not quite close enough this time, as I am hearing as well, folks, that Emmons, the leader in the GT3 category, is being caught up by Martin. I think Martin just went for a tyre change perhaps, and he has gone onto a much fresher set of tyres. He's just taken 5/10 of a second out of Emmons on the previous lap, but Lack, meanwhile, very close to the back of Taylor, and these two getting ever closer. And Lack there coming down to the braking for turn 5. You saw a little bit of brake smoke come up off the car there, but nothing major, nothing fatal, and Lack getting ready to attack very shortly. And to give you an idea, you can see just going through the picture at the bottom was Emmons, but this is Martin right now after having that pit stop there, the unexpected pit stop, chasing after Emmons and closing that gap down. And I think he may be in a position to strike come probably the last 2 laps. That's where he's going to potentially look to make the attack versus Emmons. But we'll have to wait and see, as that gap is 3.6 seconds, and we'll know that whilst Martin is pushing, Emmons will look to find every little bit of performance he can out of the car right now in order to be able to hold on to that race win come the end of tonight's hour. And meanwhile, looking back up front, we jump once again on board with Lack to see what's happening in that cockpit. And as they make their way across the timing line there, you can see Lack having a slightly lesser lap by comparison with Taylor that time, losing 2/10 by comparison. But at the same time, the two of them are inseparable still, all the same, and I think this is where Lack just needs to find the right time to get as close as possible and then go for the attack. And I think that was an attempt there to put more pressure on Taylor over the last couple of laps, to essentially say to him, look, I'm getting ever closer to you, look more at me rather than the track ahead of you. But Taylor didn't make any major mistakes, so they did keep going a little bit wide of apex into turn 11, and that's something which Lack will have noticed. And now he's just taking the pressure off a little bit, cooling the tyres down, cooling the car down, and he'll look to go attacking again within the remaining 5 minutes. That's where I think now Lack will come back into the fight. Meanwhile, I can give you an update on the Emmons versus Martin situation. Martin chasing after Emmons, of course, for P1 in the GT3 category. And Martin right now closing that gap down. He has been taking approximately half a second to 7/10 of a second out of Emmons lap on lap. And to give you an idea, on the last lap, Emmons set a 45.6. Oh, hold on a second. We are hearing there's been a major crash for Siegert, and Siegert has had a major incident. Now, this is coming down towards turn number 10 here. As he's coming down into the corner, let's see what happened. So under braking, the rear end just gets loose and the car essentially parks itself up at the circuit. Well, 10 out of 10 for parking the car there from Siegert. So he was able to keep it together, but I think it was just the rear end came loose on him. And Martin, as I was saying on that previous lap, took 1.4 seconds out of Emmons. I think Emmons may have made a mistake on that lap because he's not taking as much time out this time around. But it is the case right now that Emmons, you can see that is really having a difficult time right now, and he is being closed down very rapidly, and there are 7 minutes to go. That's approximately 4 laps for these drivers, and as a result of that, I think that Martin right now will be thinking, if I can take another half second here and another 7/10 of a second here, then I'm going to be in the perfect striking position on the final lap. But we'll have to wait and see as both drivers make their way through turn 12 and into 13. It's going to be very close for the GT3 win and also for the GTE win come the very end of this race. It's getting ever closer as we see back up front now that Lack inching onto the back of Taylor once again. He's starting to get himself ready for the attack, as Martin on that lap as well, I can tell you, was approximately 9/10 of a second faster than Emmons. So there was a mistake from Emmons, I think, on the lap prior, but the drivers getting closer and closer as they make their way around in that GT3 battle for the lead. In fact, to give you an idea, as the battle between the GTEs has opened up a little bit, Emmons now, as we look for him and we look back from his gearbox, this is to give you an idea of how close these two are. You can see that behind, meanwhile, Martin, whilst he looks slow at the moment as they make their way through turn at number 4, you can see how Martin just taking so much more aggressive lines through each of the corners here, and as a result of that, being able to catch up. And it's particularly through these heavy braking zone corners such as turn 4, turn 5 and turn 10. It's where Martin just seems to have so much more grip by comparison with Emmons, and I think going for that second stop has worked, and I think Martin took the logic of, I can get back past him on track with a much fresher car, more well equipped to go for the moves, as they make their way up through turn number 9 and head down towards turn 10. And that gap between these two now coming down to a second, so it will definitely be the case that very shortly I think we are going to be seeing the battle open up once again, as we hear that Siegert has just made his way across the timing line there in P3 of a 45.0. They're being very quiet for him right now, as now Martin is only 8/10 of a second off of the back of Emmons, and you'll see them both coming around through turn number 11 as they make their way through the corner then, and now coming up towards turn number 12 as we jump to the blimp cam here, and you can note that Martin will be salivating at this prospect as they make their way onto another lap, going on to a lap 32 they go, having completed 31 laps so far, and Emmons will be looking for every which way to try and stay ahead and try and give himself the best possible run onto the straight here down towards turn 1, given the fact that that's where Martin will want to close up as much as possible to go for the move into turn number 1. Meanwhile, in that battle for the GT race lead, I can tell you that there's been no change. That gap has slightly reopened to 6/10 of a second once again. We are still keeping an eye on that, but I think there's been a mistake here. Emmons, it looks as though has made a mistake somewhere, because the two of them are side by side, and as they're coming up in towards turn number 4, it's Martin on your left, it's Emmons on your right side as they go into the braking zone here. I think it's Emmons who's going to try and hang it all the way around here in order to get back into the switchback left-hander at turn 5, but Martin just with so much more grip able to get on the power sooner, and as a result of that, it is the case that Martin has got himself up into P1, and I think he's now going to pull away with this and try to run away with it. But let's find out what happened to set this all off. So Emmons making a mistake into turn 3 there. You could see that he went off camera slightly. He just went way too deep into the turning point for turn 3 after coming out of turn 2, and that's what set the whole chain of the pass off. And really good work there from Martin to capitalise, but can he pull away? That is the question, as these drivers both make their way now onto another lap come the end of sector 3. And will Emmons have something hidden? Perhaps he's got a little something in store just to surprise Martin. Perhaps he's been trying to save it all up, knowing he'd get past and he could potentially get back fast on the very final lap. We'll wait and see, of course, but I think right now, come at the end of this lap, Martin, if he's got a gap in excess of a second, then Emmons has hit the cliff, and as a result will not be coming back into the fight unless Martin makes a horrific mistake at this point, which would cost him what is a deserved, surely, race win at this point. But with 3 minutes to go, I can tell you that with this battle for P1 in the GT3 category opening up, and to give you an idea, Martin were 44.7 on that lap, and Emmons were 46.9. I definitely think Emmons is hitting the cliff in terms of those tyres. The car just not looking as though it wants to go through the corners anymore. We can hear that Seeger has had another major crash. This time coming out of what was turn number 4 going into 5 here, and I think the car's just decided that it doesn't want to cooperate as he goes through turn 5. He rides high on the apex curb and the car says no, and he has to rejoin the circuit. But definitely it has been a case for a lot of our drivers. I think they're noticing how the tyres in particular just not providing the grip over the one stop compared to the two stop and Martin, and as a result of that it's something which a number of drivers will be keeping as information going into the main season at the end of this month. But as we see now, the battle for the race lead in the GTE category, it's the closest battle out on circuit right now, and it's going to go down to the wire, albeit Lack has fallen a little bit back right now. 3 tenths was the difference between these two on the previous lap, with Taylor gaining 3 tenths over Lack. And I think that Lack is trying to find every which way to put Taylor under just a little bit of pressure to cause him to make a mistake. But I do not think at this point it is going to be the case that Lack is going to be able to get there. As I'm hearing, hold on a second, what has happened to Emmons and Martin? Martin has just been overtaken here. Let's take a look what's happened between these two. Coming down into turn number 10, so Martin just going very deep and Emmons picking up the position. So we have had a change of the race lead in the GT3 category, and Martin, this is not looking good. That car is losing a lot of pace here. I think Martin's run out of fuel, or something's gone very wrong with the car technically, because that car is literally just creeping around right now. Has Martin gone too far and underestimated the fuel perhaps in the car? And Martin is parked up on the start finish line here, and as a result is now out of the race for P1 in the GT3 category. And given the fact that Seeger is behind him and is still on the same lap, and Stock is only 1 lap down, they could both get past him and jump up onto the podium here. And meanwhile, with less than a minute to go, I can tell you in that battle for the race lead in the GTE category, it will be the case that these two are going to go on to 1 more lap as it currently stands, and Lack is as close as he's ever been. In fact, the closest he's been in a long time, as they make their way out of 12 and into 13. So it will come down to the final lap, and Lack has been saving it all for one final lap to try and get past Taylor as they make their way out of the final corner then and onto what I suspect will be their final lap of the race. They are going to be completing 36 laps in total, as we hear that Stock has also had a crash somewhere, but we'll come back to that a bit later right now because we're focusing on this battle for the race lead. You can see that Taylor right now making it way through turn 1 very safely here, but Lack is very strong through turn 3 up into 4. Can he capitalise this time, Lack, as they make their way up through the right-hander here? Not able to get close enough. In fact, not as close as perhaps he would have liked to have been compared to what he's able to achieve through that corner, what we've seen previously. Taylor getting the better measure of him there. Coming through turn 4, both drivers had a very good run through the right-hander there. And Lack, in fact, dropping back a further half a second as we hear that Seeger has now passed Martin to go up a position. And I think Stock has parked the car out on circuit. But focusing back on this, we can see that Taylor just opening that gap up enough after Sector 1 and going into Sector 2 here. I think Taylor will feel he's done enough unless he gets anything wrong now. And that gap is continuing to open up. In fact, Lack is falling off of the back of Taylor as they make their way through the right-hander here of turn number 9. It is 1 second the gap right now, and Lack is definitely falling away here. I think Taylor has done it. I think he's done enough to hold off Lack, barring anything sudden that happens in this final sector. He's literally got this sector to go, and it will be the win in the GTE race in this feature-length race for Taylor, which would be a fantastic result for him. He's had pressure all the way through. If it wasn't from Everett, then it was from Lack. But I think it's going to be the case as he's only got 1 more corner to go. He comes through the right-hander very shortly, and the checkered flag is out. It's going to be the win in the GTE class for Taylor, ahead of Lack. 1.4 seconds separating the two of them in the end. Congratulations to both drivers, but to Taylor in particular for the race win. A brilliant drive there from Taylor from start to finish, not succumbing to the pressure. And as for the other drivers making their way around on circuit right now, we have got Addy, who's just making his way up to turn number 11 and through to 12 very shortly. It is going to be a P3 in the GTE category for Addy after what was a very difficult race, but still great amount of track knowledge obtained, of course car knowledge as well, and whether he wants to race in the GTE category for the season as he comes across the line in P3. And then looking a bit further back as he comes across, it is going to be Emmons, who in the end, despite it all, despite the shock of Martin coming out of the pits 17 seconds ahead of him, although it seemed a little bit unreal, and then to see them go in for a second stop, it is going to be Emmons with only 2 corners to go who is going to bring it home with the win in the GT3 class as of the feature race tonight. A difficult race for him, but as he flashes his lights going around the final corner here, it's a win for the BMW driver as he crosses the line. A brilliant job, brilliant execution there. And in P2 in the end, it is Seeger who has crossed the line already, and P3 went to Martin. So that is your race complete. That is the race in the GT3 and GT category, and you can see there the classification subject to any stewards' inquiries. Everett coming home. Well, that's the qualifying results, I should say, not the race results. My sincere apologies, ladies and gentlemen. We'll have to get that fixed for another time. But a brilliant set of races there, and well done to all of our drivers for what was a fantastic pair of races over the course of this test event for Season 2 of iRacing's GT3 and GTE class racing, as brought to you by NXTGEN Racing. But that's going to be all from us this evening. Thank you very much for tuning in. I hope you have enjoyed it, and if you have, be sure to let me and the NXTGEN Racing team know. But until next time, remember to stay safe, stay well, stay smiling, and as always, stay on track. Much like these two guys right now, who I think will be cooling down very shortly, very happy in formation, and knowing that whilst the fighting between the two of them was extremely ferocious, at the same time it was highly respectable, and they were able to keep it close all the way to the end as they now bring their cars around to go into the pit and put them in Parc Fermé. But thank you very much for tuning in, and good night.